Forest spirits. At the first faint glimmers of dawn, the weak light struggled to penetrate the thick frost covering the cabin's windows, casting a pale diffuse glow across the vast snow-covered landscape stretching endlessly outside. Beyond the glass, a relentless snowstorm persisted in its furious, swirling dance, tearing at icy flakes and swirling them into intricate patterns that blurred the distant horizon, while muffling every sound in the frozen silence. Inside, a profound quiet reigned, interrupted only occasionally by the faint groan of the worn wooden floors and the distant wailing of wind battering the sturdy walls. Samuel Carter sat upright in his battered, time-worn armchair, wrapped in a worn threadbare blanket loosely draped around his shoulders. His once keen, sharp eyes now hovered over the frost-etched windows, tracing the delicate crystalline patterns that resembled frozen webs, spun by a silent spider. His breath fogged up the glass briefly before dissipating into the chilling air, adding a fleeting cloud to the icy pane. A sudden shiver ran down his spine, not from the cold, but from an instinctual prickling at the back of his mind, as if something unseen and lurking just beyond sensing was quietly watching. Luna, his loyal and perceptive canine companion, lay curled at his feet, her body tense, eyes alert, ears twitching constantly. She whimpered softly, her nose twitching at the stale, icy air, then lifting toward the window with cautious curiosity, sensing an anomaly lurking beyond the frozen veil, something that didn't belong in this eerily silent wilderness. A sharp, distinct crunch suddenly echoed from outside, deliberate and piercing, cutting sharply through the roaring storm. Samuel's gaze instantly snapped toward the door, his brow furrowing in cautious suspicion. The fierce howl of the snowstorm effectively masked the sound, yet his heightened senses prickled with unease and suspicion. He hesitated for a moment, then slowly and carefully moved toward the door, cautious but driven by an unshakable urge to investigate what might be happening beyond. His hand hovered over the latch, trembling slightly as he sensed the importance and possible danger of what lay beyond. He gently pushed the door open just a crack, allowing the icy gust to spill inside, swirling snowflakes dancing around his face. Peering intently into the whiteness outside, he carefully searched for any signs of movement, for the slightest indication of life, disturbance, or presence. The world outside remained a swirling, featureless expanse of white snow and fog. At the threshold, impressions pressed into the snow distinct, fresh footprints, oddly purposeful in their pattern. They led away from the cabin, heading into the vast wilderness, toward the dense forest that bordered the quiet valley. Samuel's heart rate accelerated, a tense blend of curiosity and unease, tightening his grip firmly on the doorframe as he cautiously crouched down. He carefully brushed aside a thin layer of frost to get a clearer look at the footprints more closely and thoroughly. The tracks appeared uneven and erratic, as if created by someone unfamiliar with the terrain or fleeing hurriedly across the snow-covered ground. The toes of the prints pointed decisively toward the dense cluster of trees, clearly indicating the direction they aimed to follow. His eyes then detected a torn piece of paper caught on a jagged stone next to the prints. He reached out with trembling, stiff fingers and gently pulled the fragment free, feeling the biting cold seeping through his gloves. The fragment was ragged, torn roughly from a larger sheet, with strange cryptic symbols scribbled hastily across it in dark ink. These markings seemed unfamiliar, yet carried an unmistakable sense of urgency, like a secret code meant only for the initiated to decipher. His gaze soon fell upon a note he discovered beneath the torn paper and hurriedly scrawled line of numbers, coordinates pointing somewhere beyond his known surroundings. His mind began racing, desperately trying to connect the cryptic symbols with the specific location, aiming to understand who had left this message and for what purpose. Was it a warning, a plea for help, or perhaps a cleverly set trap designed to deceive? The urgency conveyed by the markings strongly suggested a hidden danger or a secret that desperately needed to be uncovered and understood. Luna sniffed curiously at the torn fragment of paper, then slowly looked up at him, her expressive eyes reflecting a silent question filled with concern and curiosity. Samuel hesitated for a moment, feeling the heavy weight of the unknown pressing down on him, making him contemplate the risks involved. Carefully, he gently slipped the fragile piece of paper into his coat pocket, feeling an almost inaudible thread pulling him irresistibly toward the mysterious message and its secrets. He quietly closed the door behind him, the storm still fiercely raging outside, and turned back toward the small cabin. His mind was filled with swirling thoughts and conflicting emotions, distrust, intense curiosity, and a growing sense of responsibility. Whatever significance this message held, ignoring or dismissing it was no longer an option he could consider. He moved to gather his essential gear, an old battered backpack, a sturdy warm jacket, and a small vintage compass that had belonged to his father. Each of these items now seemed imbued with a new, deeper significance, as if charged with unspoken purpose and a call to action. As he carefully prepared himself, Luna softly patted around his feet, occasionally casting nervous glances toward the door, her body tense with anticipation, almost as if she was urging him to reconsider or stay behind. A deep, steadying breath helped Samuel compose himself and calm his nerves. Outside, the wind howled louder and more fiercely, creating a haunting backdrop, yet he felt an undeniable instinctual pull, a primal urge to follow the trail that called to him. The precise coordinates burned brightly in his mind, serving as a guiding beacon that beckoned him beyond the silence and safety of his refuge into the vast, mysterious unknown. He paused for a moment, gazing at the snow-covered landscape that stretched endlessly before him. The world was blanketed in white, pristine, and utterly still, yet beneath that tranquil surface, secrets stirred quietly, an unspoken promise of adventure and discovery. The footprints, the torn message, the enigmatic destination all whispered hints of a story waiting patiently to be uncovered. Without hesitation, he tightened his coat around himself and adjusted his pack, feeling the weight of newfound resolve settle within him. His guarded yet resolute heart urged him forward into the cold, silent wilderness, driven by determination. No matter what lay ahead, he could no longer resist the powerful call of the unknown that beckoned him forward. As he stepped boldly into the storm's raging fury, he moved deliberately toward the forest edge, each draining crunch of snow beneath his boots, echoing loudly in the stillness of the early morning. The tempest roared fiercely behind him, yet before him, mysterious shadows and hidden secrets invited him onward, drawing him into the heart of the wilderness, where silence was simply a prelude to coming revelations. The icy wind cut through the sparse trembling trees, causing brittle branches to rattle noisily and scattering a sharp biting icy sting that seemed to seep deep into Samuel's very bones. His breath briefly condensed into clouds beneath the heavy gray overcast sky, the somber cloud cover pressing down as he carefully adjusted his worn, tattered hat and pushed forward. Luna's paw prints led into the tangled, shadowy wilderness beyond, guiding his way. Each step on the snow-covered trail produced a crisp, sharp crunch beneath his sturdy boots, the sound softened by the thick, pervasive silence of winter's firm grip. The faint, distinctive tracks grew more visible as they wound deeper into the forest darkness, with broken twigs and displaced snow revealing signs of recent passage. Samuel's watchful gaze fixed intently on the ground, observing the irregular pattern of footprints, deliberate and purposeful, possibly left by a human. The snow here was uneven, pressed down in patches and ripples, hinting at hurried movement, cautious stealth, or perhaps a desperate attempt to go unnoticed. His gloved fingers brushed carefully over a snapped twig, then retraced the prints pressed into the icy crust, meticulously searching for any clues that might unravel the mystery ahead. He paused for a moment, listening intently to the thick silence of the forest. The area was eerily quiet. only broken by the faint murmur of the wind and the distant echoing howl that drifted hauntingly through the dense trees. The sound carried a mournful tone, almost serving as a warning, resonating across the empty, foggy space. Samuel's muscles tensed instinctively, and he instinctively reached into his coat pocket for a small, well-worn whistle that he kept for emergencies. After a brief hesitation, he decided against using it and allowed his hand to fall back to his side, trusting his heightened senses felt far safer than risking the danger of attracting distant or unseen threats with a signaling device. Luna moved ahead cautiously, her nose close to the cold ground, her body tense yet composed. Her ears flicked at every barely perceptible noise, while her tail flickered with nervous but alert motion. Samuel kept a slow, careful pace, meticulously avoiding any disturbance to the fragile crust beneath his feet. Every step was precisely measured to prevent slipping or losing balance on the unpredictable, treacherous terrain. The ground became increasingly dangerous. Patches of ice glistened like reflective glass, concealed beneath a thin layer of snow, ready to cause him to fall if he was not vigilant enough. A sudden, powerful gust of wind suddenly swept through the area, lifting a flurry of snow off the branches and revealing a cluster of broken twigs and cleverly hidden fresh footprints crossing the trail. Samuel knelt down carefully, brushing aside the snow with his gloved fingers to examine the ground more closely. The tracks here appeared larger and were irregularly spaced, which suggested hurried movement or an attempt to stealthily conceal the trail from anyone nearby. His eyes narrowed as he carefully surveyed the dense surrounding environment. The tall trees stood like silent sentinels, their twisted, gnarled branches casting long, ominous shadows even under the gray, dull sky. Luna's body suddenly tensed, and she emitted a low, alert growl, ready to defend. Samuel's intense gaze instantly snapped to her, scanning the thick undergrowth and tangled bushes. A distant, haunting howl echoed again, this time closer and more persistent, piercing the silence. His heart began to race, but he forced himself to remain calm and composed. The ominous sound didn't necessarily indicate immediate danger, yet it heightened his sense of vulnerability and awareness of the growing threat around them. He reached into his well-worn satchel, carefully pulling out a small leather-bound notebook filled with densely written notes and detailed sketches. The surrounding terrain was entirely unfamiliar to him, yet the subtle clues such as the faint footprints, broken branches strewn across the ground, and distant haunting calls were all quite evident if he interpreted them correctly and attentively. He was just about to stand up when Luna suddenly lifted her head sharply, sniffing the air with intense focus. Her body immediately tensed, and she emitted a questioning bark, indicating her alertness. Samuel followed or gazed toward a narrow, almost hidden gap between two tall trees. He cautiously moved closer, mindful of slipping on the icy, treacherous ground beneath his feet. Peering through the small opening, he spotted a faint trail of disturbed snow leading downhill, which appeared steeper and far less stable than the path they had been following earlier. A cold shiver ran down his spine as he contemplated the significance of this sign. The trail looked fresh, unmistakably made by someone or something well-versed with these woods and their secrets. Every instinct in him was urging him to turn back immediately, to retreat to the safety and warmth of his cabin, and to abandon this risky and potentially dangerous pursuit. But an insatiable curiosity, stubborn and unwavering in its persistence, refused to let him go from its relentless grip. The enigmatic message, the peculiar footprints, they all summoned him onward, urging him to investigate further. He exhaled slowly, calming his nerves and steadying the trembling edge of his resolve, which was tested by the growing tension. This was the critical moment he had long anticipated when his hesitation was met with unwavering determination. Carefully, he signaled Luna to remain close beside him, then advanced cautiously toward the steep downhill slope. The terrain here was notably more unstable and treacherous, with snow-covered rocks and icy patches, threatening to shift suddenly beneath his cautious steps. His boots skidded once, serving as a stark reminder of how delicate each step was on this perilous, uneven surface. A faint rustling sound emerged soft, muffled by the swirling wind, but distinct enough to draw his attention. Samuel froze instantly, ears sharply straining. The noise appeared to originate from just beyond the line of trees, with subtle movement hinting at an unseen presence lurking nearby. His grip on his walking stick grew even more firm, his knuckles turning stark white beneath his gloves as he clung tightly to it. Luna's entire body tensed up beside him, her eyes intensely fixed on the shadowy underbrush that seemed to hide secrets just out of sight. He hesitated for a moment, weighing whether to call out into the darkness or to stay silent and listen. The forest around them appeared to hold its breath, the only audible sound being the distant echoing call of that haunting howl that sent chills down his spine. Every instinct within him was screaming to proceed with caution, yet he was fully aware that turning back was not an option at this point. The trail underfoot, the footprints pressed into the damp earth, and the far-off sounds all formed a complex mosaic of subtle clues, pointing towards something unseen yet agonizingly close. His foot suddenly slipped on a slick moss-covered patch of ground, forcing him to scramble and brace himself against the twisted, gnarled trunk of a nearby tree. The coarse bark scraped his palm painfully, providing him with a momentary grounding in the chaos. He cast a quick glance around, his eyes darting back and forth between the shifting shadows and the path still ahead of them. The woods seemed to teem with unseen eyes watching intently, silently observing and waiting for the right moment to reveal themselves. A sharp, sudden crack of splintering wood shattered the oppressive silence around them, making both Samuel and Luna instantly tense and alert. Luna let out a soft growl, instinctively lowering her body into a cautious crouch, as she prepared for any immediate threat. Samuel's heartbeat pounded loudly in his chest, yet he held perfectly still, honing his senses to catch any additional sounds. The noise had originated from behind him rather than ahead, prompting him to carefully pivot and slowly turn his head, narrowing his eyes and attentively listening for further signs of movement or danger. The trail beneath his feet was progressively becoming more irregular and treacherous, with the snow thinning out and patches of ice appearing more often, indicating that the terrain was shifting, becoming increasingly unstable and perilous. Despite these risks, an unwavering and almost magnetic desire to press forward compelled him onward, driven by the need for answers about the mysterious message, the distinct footprints, and the lurking presence that seemed to watch from the shadows. He was about to take another step when suddenly a powerful gust of wind swept through the trees, rustling the branches and whispering ancient secretive hints from the unseen depths of the dense forest around him. The distant howl resumed once more, gradually fading into the quiet expanse, yet the sense of unease persisted deeply within him. Samuel took a deliberate steadying breath, attempting to ground himself amidst the biting cold air. He pressed forward, cautious and unwavering, into the lurking shadows of the woods. Something in this forest had undeniably shifted, becoming darker, more alive, with eyes unseen but felt. He could sense it, the heavy presence of unseen watchers, and the faint yet persistent feeling that the truth he was pursuing was just beyond his grasp, concealed beneath the next snowdrift or hidden behind the next bend in the trail. In that moment, a stark realization settled over him. There was no possibility of retreat now. Whatever awaited him within these woods was aware of his presence, and he had no choice but to face whatever lay ahead. Samuel's gaze was fixed intently on the jagged silhouette of the cliff's edge, with the weakening light casting fractured, flickering shadows across the icy valley sprawled below. The wind tore through him with relentless intensity, tugging at his coat and whipping loose snow into sharp, stinging flurries that struck his cheeks. Each powerful gust carried with it faint whispers of unseen movement, almost tangible, yet invisible, that sent chills up his spine and raised every hair on his body. Luna's low, menacing growl resonated deeply in her throat, alert and extremely tense, serving as a warning to him about the unseen danger lurking stealthily nearby. He moved carefully and cautiously toward the edge of the precipice, taking each step deliberately, fully aware of the treacherous, unstable footing beneath him. The crusted layer of snow beneath his sturdy boots was slick with a thin, fragile sheen of ice, cracking softly and eerily with every cautious step he took. His gaze flicked downward, catching sight of abandoned, overturned sleds scattered across the vast snowfield below. Their weathered wooden frames lay askew, some shattered into pieces, others toppled over, abandoned in chaotic disorder and disarray. Fresh, recent tracks crisscrossed the pristine white expanse, leading from the shadowy, dense forest into the wreckage area. They looked unmistakably recent, deliberate, and unambiguous evidence of recent human activity in the vicinity. A cold shiver ran uncomfortably down Samuel's spine, heightening his sense of unease. The tracks were unquestionably fresh, no more than a few hours old, indicating that whoever had abandoned these sleds had been here quite recently, and their purposeful, deliberate patterns strongly suggested that someone was still nearby, possibly watching his movements or hiding in the shadows. His grip on his sturdy walking stick grew even firmer, causing his knuckles to widen as the distant, muffled sounds of footsteps and movement drifted through the conveying wind, soft yet persistent and increasingly unsettling. He carefully surveyed the uneven terrain, narrowing his eyes to better see through the fading, dimming light. The expansive valley lay sprawling beneath him, dotted with sharp, jagged ice formations and snowdrifts that shimmered eerily in the subdued twilight. Shadows flickered intermittently across the landscape, resembling ghostly remnants of long-past conflicts and struggles. Luna's paws made soft, crunching sounds as they pressed into the snow, the only other noise besides the mournful howl of the biting wind. Suddenly, Luna's ears perked sharply forward, her nose lifting alertly into the cold air. She emitted a deep, urgent growl, her body tense with anticipation, muscles coiled tightly beneath her fur. Her stance shifted into a vigilant alert, with her eyes fixed intently on a point just beyond Samuel's critical peripheral vision. He slowly turned his gaze in the same direction, but saw only whirling snow and the faint, broken outline of distant wreckage. A gust of frigid wind swept through the area, colder and louder than before, prompting him to instinctively draw his coat even tighter around himself, seeking warmth and protection. He carefully examined the darkness ahead, his sharp eyes rapidly moving from one shadow to another, actively searching for any sign of movement or suspicious activity. The chilling feeling of being constantly observed grew stronger, prickling his skin and causing the tiny hairs on his arms to stand on end with unease. He hesitated briefly, then gradually lowered himself onto his knees, slowly inching closer to the very edge of the snow-covered terrain. The snow here was tightly packed and firm, yet a faint, shallow indentation in the pristine white surface suggested recent footsteps, possibly someone crouched or seated just moments ago. The footprints directly headed toward the wreckage, but suddenly veered off sharply into the dense forest, as if intentionally avoiding something or someone. His mind was racing with questions. Who could possibly leave sleds here in such an exposed, vulnerable spot? Why would they abandon them so easily? These questions echoed without clear answers, only an overwhelming, persistent feeling that unseen eyes were watching him silently, orchestrating the quiet chaos of the surroundings. Luna's loud growl gradually softened into a menacing snarl, her body coiled and ears pointing straight forward in alert readiness. She shifted her weight subtly, prepared to either spring into action or retreat swiftly, her gaze intently fixed on a narrow and winding trail that disappeared into the dense trees ahead. The wind carried a soft, rhythmic, crunching sound resembling deliberate footsteps approaching from the shadows, slow and steady, adding a sense of impending presence. Samuel's heart hammered in his chest, yet he maintained his breathing with careful control, trying to stay calm. Every instinct screamed at him to fall back, to seek safety behind the nearby rocks, or to retreat to his cozy cabin in the woods. Nevertheless, his curiosity and unwavering stubbornness kept him firmly rooted in place. He slowly raised his hand to signal Luna to remain where she was, then cautiously edged closer to the edge of the precipice, his eyes narrowing to scrutinize every movement. A brief flicker of motion caught his eye, a tiny, swift shape, darting behind a cluster of snow-covered rocks. He tensed, muscles coiled, ready to react instantly, but the figure was gone almost as quickly as it appeared. Yet, the trail of footprints persisted, heading directly toward the base of the cliff, where shadows grew even darker and more oppressive. He paused, contemplating whether to descend into the valley, fully aware of the risks involved in the steep and potentially dangerous descent, as well as the unknown threats lurking beneath the thick darkness. The thought of losing this advantageous vantage point, of missing crucial clues or signs, tight in his stomach with growing anxiety. But the unsettling idea of an unseen observer lurking below, watching from the shadows, weighed heavily on his mind, making him uneasy. Luna suddenly let out a low, hesitant whine, her nose twitching rapidly as she picked up a subtle new scent, faint, smoky, with a distinct hint of burnt wood and lingering ashes. She stepped forward cautiously, ears alert and pricked, her hackles raised slightly in alertness. The scent strongly suggested recent activity, either someone seeking shelter from the cold or someone hurriedly leaving the area in a rush. Samuel hesitated for a moment, then slowly reached into his well-worn satchel, his fingers gently brushing against the smooth, aged leather. Inside, he kept a small compass and a tattered, weathered notebook, remnants of his past life and adventures. He carefully weighed his options, staying put and observing further, risking potential discovery or attempting a cautious, silent descent into the mysterious unknown. Suddenly, a shift in the wind carried a muffled sound like a branch snapping under weight or a faint step on the frozen crunchy leaves. The noise froze him in place, his heart pounding softly as he froze, listening intently to the stillness surrounding him. His eyes swiftly darted toward the winding trail ahead, then flicked to Luna, who was now completely alert, her teeth slightly bared as she carefully scented the crisp air around them. He made a firm decision in that moment. He would not be easily driven away by mere shadows or unseen eyes lurking in the darkness. Not just yet. However, he understood that venturing further into the depths below could potentially change everything, either revealing long-hidden truths or unleashing dangers that were better left undisturbed and forgotten. He slowly and cautiously backed away from the precarious edge, making sure not to disturb the fragile silence surrounding them. His gaze remained fixed on the trail, attentively waiting for any subtle sign of movement or disturbance. The wind's mournful howl grew louder and more insistent, almost as if nature itself was warning him to stay perfectly still, to listen closely, and to remain consistently cautious. The footprints in the snow, the wreckage scattered nearby, and the distant haunting sounds all painted a vivid picture of chaos and relentless pursuit. Whatever had abandoned the sleds was still lurking nearby, silently watching and patiently waiting for the moment to strike. Samuel grasped with chilling clarity that the crucial moment of decision was rapidly approaching. He faced the choice to descend into the deep valley and confront whatever hidden threat or creature was lurking beneath, or to remain on the treacherous edge, silently observing from the shadows, uncertain if the unseen menace was already close at hand. Moving carefully away from the precipice, a new awareness crystallized in his mind. The clues he was seeking were guiding him ever deeper into a complex web of secrets and mysteries. The abandoned sleds, the fresh footprints pressed into the snow, the faint aroma of smoke all indicated that a disturbance had occurred quite recently and was far from ordinary survival circumstances. Someone or something had been here only moments ago, and their lingering presence was still unmistakably detectable. He cast a quick glance back towards the shadowed forest, feeling the heavy weight of unseen eyes watching him from the darkness. His determination became firmer. He would follow the trail not out of recklessness, but because he desperately needed answers that might come at a great personal cost. The situation was no longer just about passive observation. It was about uncovering the truth, regardless of how dark or perilous the path might become. Luna's low warning growl resonated once more as she sniffed the air, her body tense and alert. Samuel tightened his grip on his sturdy walking stick, then slowly stepped carefully toward the edge of the dense forest, determined to discover what mysteries lay hidden in the shadows beyond. The wind howled even louder now, as if warning him to proceed with extreme caution, but he pressed on steadily, driven by an urgent need to uncover the secrets concealed beneath the crisp, icy silence. Samuel hesitated at the brink of the narrow canyon, where the towering icy walls loomed like ancient guardians frozen in time. Night had fully fallen, cloaking the landscape in shadowy darkness, with only a faint silvery glow of moonlight reflecting softly off the frost-covered surface. The biting cold seeped deep into his coat, numbing his fingertips and making him shiver, yet his gaze remained fixed intently on the shadowed opening ahead. Luna pressed close beside him, her ears pinned back and every muscle taut with alertness and readiness. The oppressive silence was only broken by the faint rhythmic crunch of snow beneath his heavy boots. Shadows danced along the icy walls as the wind whispered softly through cracks and crevices, carrying an almost inaudible murmur of mysterious sounds. Samuel's eyes darted quickly from the narrow crevice to the surrounding icy walls, probing for any signs of movement, life, or potential threat. He took a cautious step forward, the snow slightly shifting and giving way on the slick, treacherous surface beneath his feet. The opening was far narrower than he had initially anticipated, barely enough for a person to squeeze through without contorting or struggling. His breath fogged rapidly in the cold, crisp air as he paused for a moment, carefully listening to the surrounding silence and faint sounds. The wind continued to tug at his coat, causing it to flap softly, but his senses became increasingly alert and sharpened. A faint, almost inaudible whisper drifted out from the dark interior, muffled yet clear enough to tighten the knot of apprehension in his stomach. Voices, murmuring. The sound was too distant for distinct words, yet the tone carried a clear human quality, urgent, hurried, tinged with an unmistakable sense of desperation. His mind raced with possibilities. Someone inside was waiting quietly, hiding, or guarding something extremely important. The suspicion grew stronger with each passing second, and his grip on his knife tightened instinctively. Luna's sharp ears twitched toward the narrow crevice, then quickly shifted back to Samuel, her stance tense and alert, ready for whatever might emerge. She emitted a low, menacing growl, serving as either a warning or perhaps an inquiry. Samuel hesitated briefly, his hand lingering near his pocket as his fingers lightly brushed the cold metallic surface of his knife. He carefully considered the danger of proceeding forward versus the potential reward of discovering something vital. The wind grew stronger, swirling around him and carrying the distant voices more distinctly, though fragmented. They were still recognizable. Not yet. Too risky. Wait. The hurried, tense words indicated urgency. Someone was inside, possibly watching or guarding the premises, adding to the overall sense of danger. The realization that he might not be truly alone in this vast, icy landscape deepened his determination and strengthened his resolve. Turning back now would mean leaving the mysterious presence unresolved forever, buried beneath thick layers of frozen snow and solid ice. Very carefully, he sank slowly to his knees, trying to make no sound that could betray his position, and carefully stretched out his hand to grasp the sharp edge of the deep crevice. The opening was jagged and uneven, a dark, narrow slit swallowing whatever faint light remained from above. As he peered inside, he adjusted his eyes to see better, attempting to detect any movement or fine details within the shadows. Shadows seemed to dance just beyond his peripheral vision, and the softly whispering sounds grew quieter, almost as if someone nearby had sensed his presence. A small faint glint of metallic reflection caught his eye, a subtle shimmer deep within the darkness, hinting at something metallic hidden there. The whispering noises resumed, now more intense and urgent, as though the unseen figures or entities had become aware of his cautious observation. From deeper inside the crevice, a rhythmic tapping echoed steadily, like someone pacing back and forth, or perhaps an object being moved carefully. Samuel's mind quickly raced, trying to interpret what the sound might be: an intruder, a guard on duty, or an unanticipated witness silently watching him from within the shadows. He moved closer, his muscles tense and his lips tightening with cautious anticipation. Entering the scene could lead to an intense confrontation or reveal a hidden discovery. Remaining in the background might cause him to miss crucial clues. The surrounding voices momentarily fell silent, as if the place was waiting for something or someone to appear or reveal itself. The deep silence was prolonged, broken only by Luna's subdued growl vibrating steadily through her chest, alert and expectant. His eyes darted around, actively searching for any signs of what might be lurking beyond the shadows. Shadows played tricks on his perception, but he managed to catch a brief flicker of movement, a metallic gleam, catching the faint glow of the moonlight. The whispers gradually resumed, softly now, as if the occupants had sensed they were being watched or perhaps listened in on. Suddenly, a sharp cracking sound echoed from within, possibly an ice shard shifting or perhaps a distant footstep on the frozen ground. Samuel froze instantly, his heart pounding not out of fear, but due to the unexpected noise that cut through the silence. The air around him grew noticeably colder, and the feeling of unseen eyes pressing in from every side intensified, heightening his senses in the chilling environment. He understood he was now confronted with a critical decision: to venture further into the unknown depths or to retreat back into the consuming darkness behind him. Suddenly, a new sound broke the silence, a delicate, melodic hum that seemed to emanate eerily from the very shadows surrounding him. It was haunting, strangely comforting, yet deeply unsettling at the same time. The whispers, the tapping, and the continuous hum merged into a dissonant chorus that awakened something primal deep within his psyche, a warning sign, or perhaps an invitation to explore the mysteries ahead. His hand trembled uncontrollably as he reached out once more, grasping the jagged edge of the opening with hesitant determination. The icy wall beneath his fingertips was extremely slick, making it difficult to gain a firm grip as it stubbornly resisted his touch. His breath fogged the cold air as he gradually and carefully slid his body into the narrow gap, inch by inch. Darkness swiftly enveloped him, the biting cold wrapping around his form like an ominous shroud. Inside, the space was cramped and confined, barely allowing him enough room to stand upright. Shadows clung to the damp, frost-covered walls, and a faint, earthy scent of damp soil mixed with icy air filled his nostrils, heightening his tense anticipation. The faint whispers persisted, gradually becoming clearer, an exchange of hurried, barely audible words that seemed to make little logical sense, but unmistakably conveyed a strong sense of urgency. He moved cautiously, his eyes darting nervously in all directions, constantly on the lookout for any signs of movement or objects of interest that might reveal what was happening around him. Then, faint but unmistakable, a soft glow appeared deeper within the dim corridor, the flickering of a small wavering light that danced erratically along the walls. The voices shifted abruptly, rising in pitch and intensity, as if the unseen occupants had suddenly noticed his trespass and were reacting accordingly. The atmosphere grew increasingly tense and oppressive, hinting at a forthcoming revelation or imminent danger. Samuel's mind hurriedly raced with thoughts, understanding that whatever lay ahead could potentially and forever change his comprehension of this mysterious place. He paused for a brief moment, weighing his options, then tightened his resolve. The shadows and secrets called to him, promising truths waiting patiently to be uncovered, and he understood that turning back was no longer an option. Moving forward with deliberate determination, he pressed deeper into the darkness, fully prepared to confront whatever hidden truths or dangers lay behind the unseen veil. As Samuel moved forward cautiously, the barely perceptible hum grew increasingly louder, reverberating through the tight enclosed space, merging with the gentle whispers and rhythmic tapping sounds around him. The flickering light became progressively steadier, gradually illuminating a rough improvised arrangement of objects, possibly the leftovers of previous explorers, or perhaps something more purposefully placed. The air around him was thick with a tense sense of anticipation, like a silent warning that was nearing a crucial discovery. At that moment, Samuel realized that this encounter would not only uncover hidden truths, but also force him to reconsider his assumptions about the lurking dangers concealed within the cold, dark shadows. The night had subtly shifted. The mystery was no longer just a distant suspicion, but an imminent, tangible reality pressing closer. He instinctively tightened his grip on his knife, and Luna's low warning growl quietly echoed as they advanced together, stepping into the unfamiliar darkness with wide eyes and heightened senses ready for any threat. Samuel paused at the entrance of the narrow cave, where the faint glow of moonlight filtered weakly through the jagged opening, casting long shadows. The damp, cold air pressed against his skin, seeping deep into his bones, making him shiver slightly. The smell of damp moss and decay hung heavily in the darkness, blending with the faint, stale odor of ancient earth. His breath formed fleeting clouds as he hesitated, ears alert to catch the subtle sounds echoing inside the distant drip of water, the gentle rustling of unseen creatures, and the soft, deliberate padding of Luna's paws beside him, all adding to the heavy atmosphere. He tightened his grip on the lantern, its delicate flame flickering uncertainly amidst the shadows. His heart beat steadily, yet the visible tension in his muscles revealed his underlying nervousness, contradicting his outward calm. Every step he took forward felt increasingly heavier, weighed down by the mysterious unknown depths lying ahead of him. Nevertheless, an irresistible, almost magnetic pull pushed him onward, driven by curiosity, perhaps, or simply by an urgent desire to uncover the secrets and hidden truths concealed within the darkness. Luna sniffed the air intently, her nose close to the uneven, rugged terrain beneath her paws, while her ears twitched constantly at every faint, almost inaudible sound around her. Her fur bristled slightly, embodying her alertness and readiness for any unexpected danger. Samuel observed her carefully, sensing her unease, and subtly adjusted his stance, becoming more cautious and vigilant. The oppressive silence around them was only broken by the slow drip of water, echoing from somewhere deeper inside the cave, serving as a constant reminder of its quiet, lurking menace. Moving carefully and deliberately, he ensured each step avoided loose stones or hidden pitfalls, mindful of the dangers that might lurk in the shadows. Suddenly, the passageway abruptly constricted, forcing him into a stooping position to continue forward through the narrow corridor. His fingers gently brushed against the damp, slick wall as he carefully navigated through the tight constriction. The lantern's thin, focused beam sliced sharply into the darkness, illuminating jagged rock formations that seemed to press inward menacingly, creating a sense of enclosure and blocking any clear route to escape. Suddenly, a sharp, unfamiliar metallic scent reached his nostrils, piercing and unsettling. His eyes darted rapidly from side to side, searching intently for the source of the strange odor. Near a small, scattered pile of debris, partially concealed beneath a thin layer of snow and dirt, he noticed something unusual. A bundle of supplies was strewn across the ground, torn and weathered from exposure to harsh elements over time. Among the scattered remnants, a worn leather satchel, frayed at its edges and showing signs of age, rested atop the debris. Close by, a battered metal box with rusted stiff hinges lay half buried beneath loose stones and dirt. He moved closer with deliberate caution, kneeling down carefully. His gloved fingers gently brushed away dirt and snow, revealing a torn piece of cloth wrapped around what appeared to be personal belongings or keepsakes. His eyes briefly darted toward Luna, who sharply sniffed the air, her ears flattening instinctively. Then she hesitated and gradually backed away, her body taut and highly alert. From among the scattered debris, he uncovered a crumpled piece of cloth embroidered with faded, almost illegible symbols. It was stained with moisture, yet the intricate pattern remained recognizable in insignia he had seen once before in a long-forgotten manuscript. His heartbeat quickened slightly, but he kept his movements deliberate and steady, remaining fully focused. As he carefully examined the scattered objects around him, a subtle but undeniable shift in the atmosphere made the fine hairs on his skin stand on end. A faint, nearly inaudible sound similar to a whisper or a soft shuffle echoed from the depths of the cave, causing him to freeze momentarily and listen intently. The noise was irregular, resembling the rustling of fabric or distant footsteps, but it was too faint and indistinct to identify clearly. His eyes flicked toward the shadows, scanning carefully, yet nothing was immediately visible. Nevertheless, the unsettling feeling of being watched intensified, prickling at the back of his neck and heightening his senses. Luna let out a gentle growl, low and warning, her entire body visibly tense and alert. Samuel instinctively reached into his pocket for the pistol, hesitating for a moment as he carefully weighed the potential danger before him. The oppressive silence within the cave pressed heavily on him, thick with an ominous sense of anticipation that made every second stretch endlessly. He gradually shifted his gaze back towards the scattered supplies around him. Partially hidden beneath accumulated snow and debris, his eyes caught sight of a torn piece of paper worn, stained with age, and with ragged frayed edges that hinted at long neglect. With cautious fingers, he slowly unfolded it, feeling the fragile, brittle texture of the material, noting that the ink was faded but still faintly readable. An hastily scrawled note emerged from the creases, written in a language he recognized from obscure and archaic text remnants of a past life, fragments from a story long buried and almost forgotten. The words danger, escape, and a name unfamiliar to him blurred slightly due to moisture, dirt, and the passage of time. The message appeared incomplete, torn into pieces, or perhaps deliberately concealed. His trembling fingers clutched the note tightly, feeling both its physical weight and the symbolic significance of what it might imply for his current situation. The realization finally dawned this was clearly someone's last message, a small but significant fragment of a larger story that had been hiding in the shadows for quite some time. Whose belongings were these? What kind of person had left them behind? What circumstances or threats had driven them to such an abrupt and desperate exit? And for what reason had they chosen to abandon it all here in this forgotten, almost abandoned corner of the world? Luna sniffed the air again, this time with even more insistence, her tail lowering slightly, while her posture remained tense and alert. The sounds emanating from deeper within the darkness grew clearer, an almost inaudible shifting of debris, the faint echo of footsteps, or perhaps the subtle settling of the earth itself. The cave seemed imbued with hidden secrets waiting to be uncovered, and Samuel understood that he couldn't simply ignore what lay beneath. He glanced down at the note one last time, feelings of curiosity mixed with unease welling up inside him, before carefully slipping it into his coat pocket. His chest constricted with a mixture of anticipation and apprehension. He sensed that whatever story these belongings carried was far from finished, and that the mystery was only beginning to unfold. More clues awaited him, and the mysterious shadows lurking in the depths called him even further into the darkness. As he slowly rose to his feet, his senses sharpened. and he cast a wary glance into the unknown depths ahead, alert and cautious. Every instinct within him urged a retreat, a moment of reconsideration, yet the compelling nature of the mystery pushed him onward. He felt a deep need to push further, to uncover the secrets hidden beneath layers of silence, chateau, and enigma. Taking a steadying breath, he moved forward carefully, prepared to confront whatever might be lurking within the darkness, fully aware that this discovery could serve as a pivotal turning point, something capable of changing everything he believed about this mysterious place and even himself. As he ventured deeper into the gloom, the faint sounds emanating from below grew more distinct in almost rhythmic, shuffling noise, a subtle disturbance disturbing the stillness of the environment around him. Luna's growl intensified, her body coiled tense, ready to either strike or retreat at a moment's notice. Samuel's grip on his weapon tightened instinctively, yet kept his focus fixed ahead, remaining cautious but driven by an urgent desire for answers. The oppressive silence of the cave was broken only by faint, irregular echoes of movement, hinting at something unseen nearby. Whatever lay ahead was no longer merely a shadow shrouded in darkness, it had become a tangible presence, a compelling story waiting patiently to be uncovered and understood. Samuel realized that whatever challenges or revelations awaited him next would inevitably alter everything he thought he knew. Standing motionless on the icy ridge, Samuel felt the cold seep into his bones as the first delicate hues of dawn cast a gentle, pale glow over the jagged and fractured terrain around him. The sharp, biting wind relentlessly pressed against his skin, but the sky overhead had cleared, revealing a cold, pale blue expanse that contrasted starkly with the snow-laden earth below. His steady breath formed fleeting clouds in the crisp air, and his gaze fixed on the crumpled note clenched tightly within his gloved hand. The fragile frost-stained paper-bore ink that had faded over time, yet parts of it remained faintly legible. Carefully unfolding the small fragment, his eyes darted over a series of strange symbols woven into familiar words. Some characters were unfamiliar, jagged, and unsettling. The message contained a set of coordinates numbers indicating a remote, isolated location and a plea written in a language that he couldn't instantly recognize. Certain words like help and danger stood out prominently, but the majority of the text appeared as an indecipherable jumble of characters, leaving him frustrated. A tense mixture of irritation and an urgent sense that he was missing an essential piece of information tugged at his mind, fueling his determination to unravel the mystery. His gaze quickly shifted toward Luna, who sat alert and attentive, with her ears perked forward and her nose twitching as she carefully sniffed the crisp, brisk air around them. Her tail was held stiffly, and her posture remained visibly tense and ready for action. Earlier, she had sensed some movement, her hackles had risen, ears pointed sharply ahead, and now her sharp, piercing bark shattered the quietness, loud and persistent. Samuel's eyes narrowed as he carefully scanned the distance beyond his immediate reach. Shadows flickered subtly at the edge of his peripheral vision, and a faint rustling noise suggested subtle movement, someone or something slowly approaching. He pressed the note firmly into his pocket, instinctively clutching it tightly as he focused intently on the unfolding tense scene in front of him. The wind had grown stronger, carrying a cold whisper that tugged at his collar and made him shiver despite the multiple layers of clothing he wore. The landscape stretched out endlessly, barren frozen wilderness, jagged rocks scattered across the terrain, and distant ridges shrouded in the early dawn's mist and haze. The coordinates called to him, but an ominous, unsettling feeling was creeping into his mind. What mysterious fate or danger awaited at that specific spot? Could he completely trust the message written on the note, or was it deliberately designed as a dangerous trap? Luna's barking voice intensified, her sharp yelps sounding firm and commanding, clearly warning of imminent danger. Suddenly, she leapt onto her paws with remarkable agility, her ears sharply alert and her eyes darting anxiously toward the seemingly endless horizon in the distance. Her stance appeared defensive, almost protective, as she carefully studied the surroundings. Samuel's hand instinctively moved toward his rifle, but he hesitated for a moment, wary that rushing toward the source of the noise might only intensify the threatening situation. Instead, he chose to freeze in place, attentively listening to the soft crackling sounds of snow shifting subtly under unseen footsteps or weight. Once more, a rustle noise broke the silence, this time closer, more urgent. Samuel caught a fleeting glimpse of rapid movement, something dark and indistinct darting behind a nearby boulder, disappearing as quickly as it had appeared. His heart beat faster despite years of living in solitude and constant vigilance. Was this figure a stranger or something more sinister lurking nearby? Is it an animal, or perhaps something entirely different and unexpected? He carefully took a deliberate step forward, moving slowly and thoughtfully. Every step in motion was precisely calculated to avoid startling whatever might be hiding or lurking nearby in the shadows. The snow beneath his boots crunched softly with each movement, and the quietness of the surroundings made every sound seem even more noticeable and amplified in the stillness of the winter air. Luna remained close to him, her low growl controlled and steady, serving more as a warning indicator rather than an immediate threat or attack. Suddenly, from behind a large boulder, a figure appeared tall, draped in a worn and rugged coat, with their face hidden under a hood. The stranger's eyes caught the faint shimmering sunlight, flickering with an expression that could be suspicion or curiosity, making it hard to tell. Samuel felt his muscles tense up instantly, instinctively preparing himself for any confrontation that might occur. But then, a flicker of recognition flashed within him, something about the way this figure moved, the way their gaze lingered for a moment longer, stirred familiarity in his mind. "Who exactly are you?" Samuel called out aloud, his voice steady yet tinged with cautious suspicion. The stranger paused for a moment, then slowly lowered the hood to reveal a face that was visibly weathered and hardened by time, neither expressing hostility nor friendliness. His piercing eyes, sharp and constantly assessing, locked onto Samuel's own gaze. "I am searching for answers," the newcomer responded softly, his voice slightly muffled by the chilly, biting air. "And I believe that you are seeking the same." Samuel's grip on the note tightened instinctively, protectively clutching its fragile paper contents close to his chest. "What is it that you want from me?" he asked cautiously. The stranger took a careful, deliberate step closer, raising his hand slightly in a non-threatening manner to show he posed no immediate danger. "I've been observing you for quite some time now, watching your actions and waiting for the right moment to approach." That message, it's far more than just a random note scribbled on a piece of paper. It's a crucial key, something that has the potential to fundamentally change everything if you interpret it correctly and understand its true meaning. But you're not the only one who is deeply interested in it and the secrets it might reveal. The words lingered heavily in the air, thick with weighty implications and hidden meanings. Samuel's mind whirled rapidly, questions racing through his thoughts. Who was this mysterious person? How did they have knowledge of the note's existence? And what kind of danger was hidden at the precise coordinates mentioned? Luna growled again, this time more fiercely and aggressively, sensing the tense shift in the atmosphere around them. Her hackles raised sharply, and she moved closer to Samuel, fully prepared to defend him against any imminent threat. The stranger's intense and piercing gaze flicked briefly to her, then quickly returned to Samuel's face. "You really need to move quickly," the stranger urged softly but urgently. "That specific location at those coordinates. It's not safe at all. There are unknown entities or things lurking there, things you simply don't fully understand yet. And to make matters worse, someone else is aware of it too and is watching. Someone who has no intention of letting you uncover the truth or discover what's really going on." A chilling shiver ran down Samuel's spine, making him feel an unsettling mixture of fear and curiosity. His eyes quickly darted back to the note in his hand, then shifted towards the distant horizon, deeply contemplating his next move. Every instinct within him screamed to back away, to retreat from whatever impending danger was heading his way. But his curiosity, along with a relentless desire to uncover the hidden truth behind all this, pushed him to move forward despite the risks. He took a slow, deep breath to steady his nerves and clear his mind. "Tell me everything you know," he firmly insisted, his voice unwavering. The stranger paused for a moment, then gave a cautious, deliberate nod. "It's about a long-buried piece of history, an echo of events that have been deliberately kept quiet and hidden away for many years. The message, along with the coordinates, point towards something that was always meant to remain concealed, underground or otherwise inaccessible. But now, it's beginning to stir again, awakening from its long silence. If you venture there without proper preparation, it could have devastating consequences and potentially destroy everything you care about." Samuel's jaw tightened with resolve. The weight of these ominous words struck him deeply, stirring both a sense of foreboding and a flicker of renewed purpose. His fingers instinctively brushed against the worn leather of the satchel hanging at his side, his only connection to his past, the last hope he had for uncovering the truth and understanding what lay ahead. "Why should I put my trust in you?" he asked quietly, his voice barely above a whisper. The stranger's eyes flickered with a hint of understanding and softened slightly, as if recalling past experiences. "Because I've been exactly where you are now," he replied patiently. "I've witnessed firsthand what happens when dangerous secrets are left hidden and buried deep. You're already caught up in this situation, whether you recognize it or not. The real question is, will you choose to walk away and abandon everything, or will you confront and face the difficult truth that's coming your way?" A sudden gust of wind swept across the rugged ridge, carrying sharp icy snowflakes that stung his cheeks with cold, fierce precision. Samuel cast a brief glance once more toward the distant snow-capped peaks, which remained cloaked in the soft glow of dawn's early light. The mysterious coordinates still beckoned him silently, but now they carried a burden far heavier and more oppressive than before, weighing heavily on his mind and soul. He tightened his grasp on the crumpled note, then sharply turned his gaze back toward the stranger standing before him. His decision was firm despite the inherent risks involved. He simply couldn't bring himself to walk away. There was something crucial, something vital hidden beyond that very point, and he knew he had to uncover it no matter what, even if it meant venturing into the unknown depths of uncertainty. Luna barked again, more urgently this time, as Samuel took a deliberate, steady step forward, fully aware of what was at stake. His resolve was unwavering. The danger was undeniable, but so was his unwavering purpose. The path ahead promised to be fraught with peril, yet it represented the only way to unravel the elusive truth and, perhaps even to finally decipher the cryptic message that had haunted him, ever since he first discovered the mysterious footprints. The first faint light of dawn was gradually fading, replaced by a dull, overcast sky that stretched endlessly across the icy wasteland. The soft crunch of snow under Samuel's boots resonated gently in the cold silence, the fresh powder muffling sound and reflecting the muted gray glow above. Each measured step was cautious and deliberate, an instinct sharpened by countless long, lonely nights spent in this frozen wilderness. Luna moved quietly and stealthily beside him, her nose pressed close to the cold, crisp ground, as she carefully scented the chilly air with attentive vigilance. The surrounding silence was dense and almost palpable, broken only by the faint crackle of snow shifting subtly under the light breeze, and the distant whisper of wind weaving through sparse, windswept trees that bowed slightly. Samuel kept his unwavering focus on the narrow, winding trail ahead, his eyes darting in all directions, scanning the uneven terrain glints of ice, dangerously catching the weak sunlight in shadowed spots, rocks hidden beneath the snow cover. His mind remained alert, constantly aware that recent disturbances in this area could signal imminent danger. He was certain that something had recently changed here, a sign that something was amiss. Suddenly, Luna brought her movements to a halt, ears sharply pricked, her tail stiffening in alertness. She sniffed the air intently, then tilted her head toward a small clearing off to the side of the trail. Samuel instinctively slowed down, tightening his grip on his rifle, ready for any unexpected motion. His heartbeat steadied but stayed deliberate and controlled as he carefully followed or gazed. There, partially concealed behind snow-dusted twisted bushes, lay a makeshift shelter consisting of a coarse tarp stretched over uneven logs, with supplies scattered messily around in disarray. The fire pit in front was now cold and long extinguished, with ash and charred wood scattered across the ground like the remnants of a hurried, chaotic departure. He crouched down carefully, brushing aside the blanket of fresh snow to closely examine the area. Clear, recent footprints led directly toward the shelter, deep impressions pressed into the soft powder, indicating activity within the last few hours. The tracks zigzagged unpredictably, some displaying uneven weight distribution, perhaps resulting from someone injured, exhausted, or unsteady on their feet. He traced the footprints delicately with his fingers, observing the irregular stride and noticing a faint drag on one boot, a sign of tiredness or possible stumbling. Luna, the dog, circled cautiously nearby, her nose to the ground, alert and searching for more traces. Samuel's gaze swept over the surroundings, broken twigs, scattered pinnacones, and signs of someone collecting kindling or trying to start a fire. An old battered metal cup was half buried in the snow, its handle bent and scratched, evidence of rough handling or hurried packing in the cold. He hesitated, caught between the urge to press forward or cautiously retreat. His hand brushed against a fragment of cloth tangled on a low branch, a pale gray scarf, frayed at the edges from exposure and wear. He carefully pulled it free, examining it closely with a keen eye. The fabric felt incredibly soft, showing signs of extensive wear, and it carried a faint lingering scent of smoke, intertwined with another subtle aroma, perhaps the delicate hint of human skin. The presence of the scarf sparked a thin thread of suspicion within him. Who could have been here? Why did they leave so suddenly without a trace? These probing questions pressed heavily into his mind, yet he maintained a composed, neutral expression. Moving slowly, he knelt down beside the shelter, carefully scanning the surrounding area with heightened caution and attention to detail. The footprints led further into the valley, gradually fading around a bend where the terrain suddenly grew steeper and more rugged. He then straightened his posture, studying the trail carefully ahead. Just beyond the shelter, the snow showed fewer disturbances, indicating the path continued onward in that particular direction. A sudden gust of wind blew fiercely through the silent landscape, causing a chilling shiver to run down his entire spine. Luna gently nudged his hand with her nose, her body tense and her eyes flickering anxiously from side to side, alert to any movement. He took a deep, calming breath, trying to steady his trembling nerves. The decision was finally made. He would carefully follow the trail ahead, but with the utmost caution and vigilance. Every step he took had to be intentional and calculated. Any unnecessary noise or misstep could reveal his position or cause him to overlook critical clues. The terrain around him was harsh and unyielding, and he understood that even the smallest mistake could prove to be deadly. As he cautiously advanced forward, a strange, almost electric sensation prickled at the back of his neck, an almost imperceptible shift, like a shadow flickering at the very edge of his peripheral vision. He paused, narrowing his eyes as he meticulously scanned the environment around him. Nothing seemed out of place, just snow-covered ground, icy patches, and the overwhelming silence of the vast wilderness. Yet, the inexplicable feeling persisted, an instinctual awareness that he was being watched by unseen eyes lurking nearby. His grip tightened firmly on the strap of his rugged backpack, securing himself and providing a sense of stability. The winding trail gently descended, leading into a denser, more tangled grove of trees, where elongated shadows stretched across the ground in the soft morning light. The faint footprints in the dirt beckoned him forward, yet his instincts urged caution, warning him to stay alert and proceed carefully. Suddenly, Luna stopped again, ears twitching sharply in response to an unknown sound. She let out a low guttural growl, a clear warning sign that communicated her alertness and deep unease. Samuel instantly froze in place, listening intently for any sounds. For a tense moment, everything fell silent, then he heard a faint rustling noise behind a nearby large boulder. It wasn't loud enough to be human speech, but it was enough to sharpen his senses and send a warning signal. He crouched low, steadying his breathing calmly, and instinctively reached for his rifle, which was slung securely across his shoulder. The cold metal of the weapon felt reassuring against his palm, giving him a sense of readiness for what might come next. Luna's fur bristled, and she emitted a soft, low growl, her entire body tensing with alertness. Samuel gradually edged toward the nearby boulder, his ears finely tuned to even the faintest sounds, while his eyes narrowed sharply. Peeking cautiously around the corner, he could see nothing but the endless expanse of snow and shifting shadows. However, the tingling sensation of unseen watchful eyes persisted in the back of his mind, causing the hairs on his neck to stand on end. He exhaled slowly and deeply, reminding himself that maintaining strict caution was now his most vital weapon. Slowly and carefully, he resumed his stealthy approach, staying close to the trail markings, where footprints in the fresh snow led him further into the eerie frozen silence of the wilderness. His mind raced with numerous questions who had been here before him. Why had they left the camp so abruptly and without a trace? And most importantly, where could they possibly have gone? Each cautious step brought him closer to potential answers, but also drew him further into the unpredictable, unknown depths of this icy landscape. The trail ahead extended into the distant horizon, hinting at hidden secrets buried beneath the winter's icy veneer. As the valley gradually narrowed and the rugged terrain became increasingly steep and treacherous, Samuel felt a subtle shift, an almost unnoticeable change in the surrounding atmosphere. The once desolate landscape no longer seemed completely empty. Instead, an intangible presence had awakened something unseen and enigmatic, silently watching and patiently waiting. He tightened his grip on the rifle, his eyes darting quickly from one shadowy patch to another, remaining hyper-vigilant for any signs of movement. Luna suddenly stiffened, ears twitching sharply again as her body tensed with alertness. Samuel froze in place, straining his ears to listen better. A faint rustling noise emerged from behind a large boulder, subtle yet enough to send a sharp spike of tension rippling through him. He instinctively crouched down, reaching carefully for his weapon as his senses sharpened, bracing himself for whatever might come next. Peering cautiously around the obstacle, he saw only an expanse of snow-covered ground and deepening darkness enveloping the landscape. Despite the lack of clear sight, the persistent feeling remained a faint, almost imperceptible gaze, a mysterious presence lurking just beyond the edge of his vision. He exhaled slowly and deliberately, forcing calm into his tense movements. Moving forward again, he kept closely to the faint trail, the fragile footprints serving as a delicate thread that guided him into the silent, icy wilderness, filled with cold shadows and quiet secrets. His thoughts swirled with questions who had been here recently. Why had they left so abruptly? And where might they have gone? The winding trail ahead held the promise of answers, but also hinted at unseen dangers. Each step felt increasingly heavier and more deliberate, as if the very landscape was resisting his persistent search. The dense cluster of trees grew thicker, their silhouettes lengthening as the morning light waned, casting long shadows across the frozen terrain. The sense of being observed intensified sharply, as if unseen eyes were piercing through the cold winter gloom. Samuel's grip on his rifle grew even tighter, his knuckles whitening, muscles coiled with anticipation. The next few cautious steps he took would decide what lay ahead, whether safety or danger, awaited and perhaps reveal what could be watching him right now from the shadows. Samuel crouched carefully behind the fractured, dilapidated wall of the abandoned cabin, his eyes glued to the silhouette slowly emerging through the snow-frosted window, barely visible in the dim light. Outside, the relentless winter had shaped a vast, thick veil of white snow that muffled every sound, creating an almost complete silence that isolated him in an icy stillness. His breath formed icy clouds as he pressed the leather journal close to his chest, his heart pounding with a fierce mixture of fear, resolve, and cautious hope. Inside the dimly lit room, surrounding him, lay remnants from previous occupants, tattered, moth-eaten blankets, rusted and forgotten tools, and a shattered, toppled lantern. His gaze was irresistibly drawn to the battered desk against the far wall, where the fragile open journal sat with brown, delicate pages. Very slowly and carefully, he leaned forward, making every effort to avoid any noise, knowing that even the smallest sound could reveal his hiding spot to whatever was nearby. Every movement was deliberate and measured. Noise could easily betray his hidden position in the silent, wintry wilderness. The handwriting appeared hurried, but still remained clear and readable, with ink smudges that clearly revealed a frantic sense of urgency and panic. As Samuel carefully read through the logs, a cold shiver ran down his spine, signaling the gravity of the situation. The entries detailed a rescue operation that had gone terribly wrong, an arduous expedition into the wilderness, aimed at locating a missing team, but which had encountered unforeseen dangers. The author meticulously described severe and unpredictable weather conditions, rapidly decreasing supplies, and a growing sense of despair and hopelessness among the team members. One particular entry, dated just a few days before the final note, described a massive avalanche that had completely buried a portion of their camp, trapping some members beneath the thick, crushing snow. Samuel's fingers trembled slightly as he turned each page, noticing how the tone of the writer shifted from cautious hope to outright desperation and fear. The final note was a frantic, almost incoherent plea for help. Hastily scrawled across the page, "They're coming. We're running out of precious time. If you find this message, don't trust the signals. They're deceptive and not what they appear to be." The handwriting suddenly came to an abrupt halt, leaving a stark blank space where the author likely paused, hesitating briefly before abandoning the journal entirely. An unexpected change in the surrounding atmosphere snapped Samuel out of his intense concentration. Outside, muffled and cautious crunching noises echoed softly against the thick layer of snow. His eyes immediately darted toward the door, and his heart pounded fiercely in his chest with a mixture of anxiety and anticipation. Footsteps, deliberate, steady, and alarmingly close, approached silently. He quickly pressed his back flat against the cold wall, clutching the journal tightly with trembling hands, ears strained to catch any other faint sounds or clues. The noises grew louder, closer than before. He could hear the faint scrape of boots on the porch boards, then suddenly everything fell eerily silent. For a tense moment, the entire space was still and breathless. Samuel's mind raced with countless thoughts, trying to assess the looming danger. Should he remain concealed and hope that the visitor simply passed by without noticing him? Or should he boldly confront the unknown intruder, risking the possibility of being exposed? He decided to stay hidden, quietly slipping into the shadows beneath a broken window frame, blending seamlessly into the darkness. His breathing became slow and controlled as he kept a close watch on the door. The faintest sign of movement, an arm reaching for the doorknob, caused him to freeze completely in place. A hand, covered in a glove but trembling slightly, grabbed the handle and gently pushed the door open. The door creaked loudly as it swung open, revealing a figure outlined against the blinding whiteness of the outside world. Samuel's eyes narrowed sharply, muscles tensing in anticipation. The visitor hesitated momentarily, then cautiously stepped inside, slowly scanning the dim, sparsely lit interior. A surge of suspicion overwhelmed Samuel. Was this person a friend or an enemy? The figure paused momentarily, then advanced further into the dimly lit space, muffled footsteps muffling softly against the dusty, uneven floor. The room was cloaked in darkness, making it difficult to discern any details clearly, but their tense, alert posture betrayed a sense of wariness, implying they were cautious and on edge. Clutching the journal more tightly in their hands, Samuel's instincts urged him to remain completely silent and unnoticed. Nevertheless, a flicker of curiosity sparked within his mind, making him hesitant. The stranger's gaze flickered back and forth across the room, eventually settling on the open pages in front of them. They briefly knelt down, their fingers gently brushing over the paper's surface, before quickly looking around once more, as if in search of something specific or hidden. Suddenly, the figure came to an abrupt halt, freezing in place. A faint, almost imperceptible sound like a small object slipping from their grasp caught Samuel's sharp attention. A brief flash of metallic shimmer appeared in the sparse light as the visitor moved closer, revealing a sleeve dusted with snow. They hesitated for a moment, then slowly reached into their pocket and retrieved a small, mysterious object. Samuel's pulse accelerated rapidly as adrenaline coursed through his veins. Was this situation a carefully laid trap, an elaborate ambush waiting to spring? Or perhaps it was just someone sincerely desperate and in dire need of assistance? Every fiber of his body urged him to either run away quickly or conceal himself somewhere out of sight. Yet a strange sense of duty and responsibility compelled him to stay rooted in place. The stranger cautiously took a hesitant step forward, their eyes intently fixed on the open journal lying on the table before them. A shallow, almost inaudible breath escaped their lips, hinting at nervousness or relief. The atmosphere grew increasingly tense, the heavy silence thick with unspoken questions, doubts, and uncertainties. Outside, the wind suddenly shifted direction, causing snow to drift softly and silently against the weathered walls of the cabin. Then, quite unexpectedly, the stranger broke the silence with a steady but muffled voice. "You found it." The words lingered heavily in the air, carrying deep and powerful significance. Samuel's eyes suddenly widened with a mixture of shock and curiosity. The mysterious stranger seemed to possess knowledge about the journal, as well as the urgent warning that had been hidden within its pages. He knew he was at a critical crossroads should he gather courage and reveal himself, risking exposure or remain concealed in the shadows. His hand shook visibly as he slowly reached for his coat, the fabric gently rustling with the movement. The stranger's gaze briefly flicked in his direction, then shifted back attentively to the journal. At that precise moment, the entire atmosphere seemed to subtly shift and tense. The stranger took a measured step closer, voice dropping to a low, serious tone. "We don't have much time. They're close now." The stark warning struck Samuel with the force of a jolting shock, and the immense weight of the dangerous situation pressed heavily down upon him. His mind was racing rapidly, overwhelmed by a mix of suspicion and urgency. The journal had hinted at a possible betrayal, and now the sudden appearance of the stranger confirmed that someone else was fully aware of the imminent danger they all faced. Trust was incredibly fragile at this moment, but revealing himself might be his only chance to uncover the truth behind this complex and dangerous situation. He hesitated for a brief moment, weighing his options, then finally pushed himself upright, emerging cautiously from the shadows. "Who are you?" he demanded firmly, his voice steady and controlled despite his pounding heart and racing thoughts. The stranger paused, eyes narrowing thoughtfully, then slowly stepped into the faint beam of light, revealing a weathered face marked by exhaustion and weariness. The stranger's expression was guarded but resolute, showing a clear determination. "I'm here to prevent them from using those signals to trap us all. I've been meticulously tracking their movements, trying to warn anyone who might be willing to listen and take action. We are rapidly running out of viable options and solutions. Samuel's hold on the journal became even more firm and determined. This startling discovery completely changed the situation, shifting his understanding of what was really happening. The signals he had been monitoring weren't simply false alarms or accidental errors. They were actually part of a much larger coordinated scheme orchestrated by unseen forces. His suspicions intensified, yet at the same time, his determination to uncover the truth grew stronger. "Why did you come here?" Samuel asked, his voice tinged with genuine suspicion and caution. "Because I knew you would eventually discover the journal," the stranger replied calmly. "And I came here because I needed to warn you urgently, before it's too late. They are closing in on us, and if we don't act swiftly now, everyone involved will be lost forever." The powerful words resonated deeply within him, echoing in his mind with greater clarity than before. Samuel suddenly understood that his initial instinct to conceal himself and stay hidden had nearly caused him to lose the crucial lead he possessed. Now, with the arrival of this mysterious stranger, his perception of the entire situation had dramatically shifted. The danger was more immediate and pressing than he had realized earlier, yet there was also a new opportunity for possible cooperation. As the stranger moved steadily closer, Samuel caught sight of the faint, almost imperceptible glow of a device in their hand, possibly an encrypted radio or some advanced communication tool. The undeniable realization that help was now potentially within reach, even if limited and uncertain, rekindled a fragile flicker of hope within him. Outside the cabin, the wind roared louder, sharp snowflakes swirling viciously against the wooden walls like a vengeful spirit determined to break through. Inside, the atmosphere remained tense and heavy, but a new alliance was slowly beginning to form between them. Samuel's perspective had shifted significantly. He was no longer alone fighting this battle. The road ahead was still uncertain and fraught with danger, but now he knew with certainty that he wouldn't face it blindly or defenselessly anymore. The door closed gently and quietly behind the stranger, sealing them both inside the cold, silent cabin. Outside, the snow kept falling steadily, blanketing the landscape in white, while inside, a delicate spark of trust and purpose flickered to life amid the shadows. Samuel's eyes remained fixed on the figures emerging from the fading twilight, their dark silhouettes flickering against the snow-covered clearing beyond his cabin. Shadows stretched long and jagged across the frozen ground, shifting and rippling with every gust of bitter, icy wind that pierced the frigid air. His breath formed quick fleeting clouds as his fists clenched tightly, muscles taut with mounting tension and anticipation. The approaching figures moved with clear intent, their hurried steps crunching loudly over frost-hardened snow, causing a ripple of unease to swell within his chest. As they drew nearer, their shapes sharpened into focus, several bundled in mismatched heavy clothing, their faces hidden beneath hoods and scarves, adding an air of mystery. Samuel instinctively stepped back, pressing himself against the rough wooden wall of the cabin, his heart pounding with a mixture of suspicion, apprehension, and dread. Every detail was etched vividly into his mind: the hurried gestures, the nervous glances over shoulders, the faint rustling of supplies or weapons concealed beneath thick layers of fabric. From his vantage point, he could hear muffled voices, rough, hurried, and tense, speaking in a language that sounded unfamiliar yet somehow strangely recognizable. Words were clipped and delivered in a tense, hurried manner, punctuated by sharp, commanding commands. Samuel furrowed his brow deeply, trying to decipher their true meaning, to catch any hints within a word or phrase that might reveal their true intentions or motives. His mind raced rapidly. Were they enemies lurking nearby, allies perhaps seeking help, or merely lost travelers wandering aimlessly through this vast, desolate wilderness? One figure, positioned slightly ahead of the others, paused briefly and slowly turned toward the cabin. Samuel's breath caught in his throat at that moment. The stranger's eyes, visible beneath a hood, seemed to meticulously scan the surroundings, lingering intently on the faint glow of his cabin through the cracks in the weathered wood. A heavy, tense silence stretched taut between them, thick with unspoken questions and uncertain fears. Without warning, the group suddenly quickened their pace, narrowing the gap between them. Snowflakes settled gently on their shoulders as they hurried forward, their breaths forming steam in the crisp, cold air. Samuel's fingers instinctively moved toward his rifle, which was leaning against the wall nearby, but he paused briefly, hesitating. Every sense in his body urged caution. These strangers could be desperate for help, dangerous, or perhaps both at once. The ambiguity surrounding their true intentions made him hold back momentarily, carefully considering his options. As the group drew closer, one figure separated from the rest and stepped forward purposefully. His face was weathered and rugged, with sharp features, and his eyes gleamed with a mixture of wariness and authority. He halted a few paces from the cabin, lifting a hand in a peace gesture, yet his expression remained guarded and alert. "Who are you?" the man asked, his voice rough but steady, slicing through the quiet evening air. His words sounded familiar yet foreign, as if borrowed from a language he'd heard long ago in some distant past. Samuel's eyes narrowed thoughtfully, trying to carefully interpret the subtle tone and rhythm of the stranger's cadence, searching for any possible clues or hints. "I mean no harm," the unknown man continued, his voice lowering slightly into a more cautious tone. "We're simply seeking some shelter from the elements or possibly safety, nothing more." Samuel's grip on his rifle tightened instinctively, feeling a mixture of suspicion and instinctive caution. The words seemed straightforward, yet they carried an underlying weight of mistrust and uncertainty. Shelter from whom exactly, and for what purpose? His gaze flickered rapidly back and forth between the group of strangers and the shadowy, dense forest looming behind them, every nerve on alert, urging silence and extreme vigilance. He sensed that revealing himself or making a move might be perilous, but remaining concealed could lead to missed opportunities or even invite unforeseen disaster. The man in front hesitated briefly before taking a cautious step forward, his eyes narrowing even further as he carefully gauged the situation. "We noticed your faint light shining in the distance. We've been diligently following your trail for several days now. It's not a safe place to stay for long, and you definitely shouldn't be alone here." A wave of tension surged through Samuel's body as he listened. The genuine concern, or maybe even desperation in his voice, made it difficult to determine his true intentions. Nevertheless, his warning was clear and unmistakable. His mind quickly raced, evaluating various possibilities. Could they be allies offering help, or was this some kind of elaborate trap? Could he really put his trust in them? Suddenly, a second figure, younger and looking visibly more anxious, stepped forward and called out from behind the leader. "We urgently require a safe shelter as a powerful storm is rapidly approaching. If we fail to find proper refuge soon, our chances of surviving the harsh night will be greatly diminished." The stark reality of those words struck him sharply like a heavy blow. Samuel's gaze quickly scanned the weary group, observing the exhaustion deeply carved into their faces, visible signs of ongoing hardship, relentless pursuit, and profound desperation. The precarious nature of their situation demanded careful caution, yet he hesitated to fully reveal his intentions to others. The last thing he wanted was to provoke unnecessary conflict or misunderstandings that could worsen their plight. He slowly took a deliberate, calculated step back from the doorway, his voice trembling slightly but remaining resolute. "You are quite far from safety. Please tell me your story. Who are you, and what brought you here? Why are you here?" The leader paused hesitantly, his eyes flickering with uncertainty and cautious hesitation. "We're survivors trying to endure in this harsh world," he finally admitted, speaking in a quiet, measured voice. "We've been relentlessly pursued by those who seek to dominate and control this entire land, regardless of the cost. Our current goal is to find trustworthy allies, but every moment that passes, time is slipping further away from us, and the situation grows more desperate. Samuel's mind whirled at this new information, processing it rapidly. The people before him weren't mere wandering travelers. They appeared to be refugees fleeing from some unknown, deadly threat, possibly enemies or forces he had only begun to understand. His grip on the rifle slackened slightly, indicating a slight easing of tension, yet he remained vigilant, keeping his weapon at the ready, eyes alert for any signs of danger. A sudden gust of cold wind swept through the quiet clearing, rattling the windows of the nearby shelter and stirring loose snow into the air in swirling patterns. Shadows flickered ominously across the faces of the figures, deepening the unsettling atmosphere and heightening the overall sense of uncertainty and unease in the scene. The group moved cautiously, exchanging cautious, wary glances among themselves as they carefully weighed their various options. In the tense, heavy silence that enveloped them, the leader's voice softened slightly, attempting to appear calm and sincere. "We mean no harm to anyone here," he said gently. "We are only looking for shelter to stay safe tonight. If you can help us, we will owe you a significant debt that we won't forget." Samuel's eyes briefly lingered on him with a mixture of suspicion and contemplation, then slowly shifted his focus to the other members of the group. The situation had become more complicated and dangerous, and the level of trust was now fragile and delicate, easily broken in this harsh, frozen wasteland. He understood that he was faced with a difficult decision: either reveal what he knew, risking a potential confrontation, or remain silent, carefully guarding his secrets and praying they would simply move on. The cold, relentless night pressed down around him, heavy and unyielding, matching the weight of his inner dilemma. His mind was actively racing, meticulously weighing the potential danger of revealing his true identity against the serious risk of turning them away permanently. Every instinct within him urged utmost caution, yet a faint, persistent inner voice subtly suggested that he should consider forming an alliance, no matter how fragile or uncertain it seemed at the moment. After a moment of tense contemplation, he finally drew in a slow, deliberate breath to steady himself. "Stay where you are," he said carefully, with his voice remaining steady but cautious. "I will make a decision shortly. Keep your distance, stay alert, and be prepared. I don't trust others easily, and trust must be earned." The leader nodded in return, raising his hands in a peaceful gesture once again to show he meant no harm. The entire group sank into a tense, wary silence, shadows flickering unpredictably around them, reflecting the fragile balance of trust that hung delicately in the cold, tense air. Samuel watched them closely for a long moment, every muscle in his body tense and alert, assessing their intentions carefully. The decision had been finalized. His next move would inevitably determine everything that followed. As the last fading rays of sunlight disappeared beyond the horizon, he understood that this encounter only marked the very beginning of a much larger journey. The fragile veneer of security was cracking rapidly, and the true challenge of survival was looming just ahead. Night had fully settled in when Samuel sat alone in the dim glow of his flickering lantern, deep in thought. Shadows danced eerily across the cabin walls, twisting into unsettling shapes that seemed to pulse and shift with the restless breath of the wind. Outside, the darkness was thick and heavy, broken only by the distant howl of a lone wolf and the faint, almost inaudible whisper of snow slipping quietly against the weathered wooden planks. Luna lay close beside him, her body tense with alertness, ears swiveling at every creak and whisper. She sensed the palpable unrest lingering in the cold air, just as he did inside. He fixated on the crumpled note lying on the rough wooden table, its edges curled from the cold and moisture. The handwriting was hurried and shaky, yet clearly urgent, an unmistakable plea for help. The message simply read, "Meet at the old quarry at midnight. Trust no one." The ink was slightly smudged in some places, with moisture from his breath mixing with the words, yet the core message remained unmistakably clear, searing itself permanently into his mind. His thoughts churned restlessly, contemplating whether to follow this cryptic lead. For days, he had wrestled with the possibility should he pursue it. The stranger's sudden, unexpected departure had left behind a trail filled with unanswered questions, and now this fragile note seemed to be a weak but persistent thread pulling him toward the unknown, into uncertain territory. He hesitated, caught between the safety of remaining alone and the compelling pull of his curiosity. Deep within, a quiet sense of responsibility had taken root, urging him to take action. Luna shifted her position, whimpering softly and pressing her nose gently into his hand. Her low whine broke the quiet silence, immediately drawing his eyes to her anxious, expectant gaze. She clearly sensed his inner tension and the unspoken conflict that gnawed at him from within. He reached out tenderly, gently scratching behind her ears, feeling her body tremble softly beneath his fingertips. Slowly and carefully, he rose to his feet, mindful not to disturb the fragile peace and quiet of the secluded cabin. Outside, the wind's howling had grown even sharper and more persistent, carrying distant whispers of approaching storms and long-buried secrets, hidden beneath the thick blanket of snow. He moved cautiously toward the window, peering into the darkness beyond. The landscape was shrouded in deep shadows, trees jagged and black against the vast night sky. The thin crescent moon cast a faint, pale, ghostly glow over the icy terrain, illuminating the frozen wilderness with an unnatural, eerie shimmer that seemed almost alive. His mind replayed the recent day's every elusive clue, each mysterious encounter trying to piece together the complex puzzle. He noticed footprints leading away from abandoned shelters, cryptic messages hastily scrawled, and signs of unseen activity in the silent snow. All these tiny details pointed toward a hidden truth buried beneath layers of frost and silence. Yet, with each passing step closer to uncovering it, the risks involved felt even more real and tangible, making the journey increasingly dangerous. Trust was delicate and easily shattered, with unseen dangers lurking silently in the shadows, patiently waiting for the right moment to strike. He took a deep, steadying breath, his resolve growing stronger with each inhale. The decision had been made. Carefully, he retrieved his coat, its thick, heavy fabric muffling the faint sounds of movement inside the cabin as he moved. Luna silently followed him, her paws making no sound on the wooden floor beneath her. As he slowly opened the door, a sharp gust of cold air rushed inside, biting at his skin and stirring the freshly fallen snow on the porch with icy swirls. Stepping out into the darkness of the night, he paused briefly to listen intently. The outside world was eerily quiet, disturbed only by the faint rustling of trees and the distant haunting cry of a solitary wolf. Every step he took toward his target felt increasingly heavy, each footfall muffled by the thick snow and softly echoing in the stillness of the cold night. His senses became heightened. Every sound, every fleeting shadow flickering in the darkness was noticed and analyzed with acute focus. The path leading towards the old abandoned quarry was indeed treacherous and unforgiving, worn down over the years by relentless winter storms and years of neglect. He moved cautiously and carefully as the landscape revealed itself only in scattered fragments beneath the pale glow of the moonlight. Sharp, jagged rocks jutted out from the snow-covered ground, and slick icy patches made each step potentially dangerous, threatening to cause a slip or fall. Luna stayed close by his side, her nose pressed firmly to the ground, highly alert to every faint scent and subtle sound around her. Reaching the outskirts of the quarry, he paused once more to take a moment, carefully scanning the inky darkness where the earth had been forcibly torn open long ago. The oppressive silence here was almost deafening, interrupted only by the faint muffled crunch of snow beneath his sturdy boots. His hand went instinctively to his pocket, clutching tightly the folded note, a reminder of the secret meeting scheduled nearby. Suddenly, a faint flicker of movement attracted his attention, a quick shimmer just beyond his peripheral vision. He tensed up, his instincts kicking in immediately. For a brief moment, he believed he saw a shadowy figure lurking behind a pile of rocks. But when he focused his eyes, only emptiness and silence stared back at him. The darkness stubbornly refused to unveil its secrets easily or quickly, lingering in silence. Then, quite faintly, he caught a subtle sound, a soft rustling noise, reminiscent of fabric gently shifting or footsteps, softly pressing into the cold powdery snow. His heart rate gradually slowed, not out of fear, but from cautious anticipation and heightened awareness of the unknown. Was it the strangers he expected, or perhaps something entirely different and unforeseen? The chill in the air intensified, and the mounting tension made him brace himself to face whatever might be lurking in the shadows ahead. A faint flickering glow surfaced just beyond the edge of his peripheral vision. A small trembling light, possibly a lantern, moved slowly across the snow-covered ground, approaching with a sense of deliberate purpose and unwavering intent. Samuel tensed up, squinting his eyes, every muscle tensed in readiness for action, prepared for whatever was coming. The figure's outline remained indistinct and blurry, yet its steady, confident movement suggested determination and resolve. He instinctively reached for his rifle, though he hesitated briefly, fully aware that he wouldn't shoot unless presented with a valid reason. His mind was rapidly racing. What message did this unexpected visitor carry with them? Who could have sent this stranger? And what were their true, possibly hidden, motives behind this encounter? The answers to these questions seemed just beyond reach, slipping away like tendrils of mist in the early dawn, elusive and fleeting. The figure halted a few yards away, and a muffled but purposeful voice drifted through the cold, crisp air. "Samuel, we've been waiting a long time for you," it said. The words sounded deliberate and weighed with significance, layered with multiple meanings, yet spoken with careful caution. Luna growled softly, emitting a warning to stay alert and prepared for whatever might come next. Samuel's grip on his weapon tightened, yet he steadfastly held his position, his eyes sharply focused on the approaching silhouette. This was the decisive moment, the crucial turning point, when silence alone would no longer suffice to conceal the truth. With purposeful deliberation, he took a cautious step forward, maintaining intense eye contact with the stranger. The decision was made, regardless of what secrets might lie ahead. He was fully prepared to face them courageously. The anticipated meeting at the quarry was no longer mere speculation. It had become an undeniable necessity. The long-buried truth, concealed beneath layers of ice and silence for so many years, was finally ready to surface. As the figure drew nearer, the faint glow of the lantern illuminated a face he recognized, marked by lines of worry, determination, and hidden stories. The voice, now clearer and more resolute, confirmed his deepest suspicion. "It's time to uncover what's truly hidden beneath the ice and silence," it said. Samuel exhaled slowly, a strange sense of calm washing over him. The night no longer felt like merely a realm of shadows and uncertainty, but had transformed into a pivotal gateway and open passage, leading directly to long-hidden truths and mysteries. With Luna steadfastly by his side, he methodically prepared himself to face whatever darkness or lurking danger awaited him in the silent darkness, fully aware that this bold step would profoundly alter his entire understanding of the world he believed he knew so well. When the stranger finally approached him, the warm glow from the lantern revealed a familiar face, eyes that shimmered with a complex mixture of fear, resolve, and unwavering determination. The voice, calm yet firm, confirmed Samuel's deepest suspicions and fears. "It's time to see what's really beneath the ice. Nothing will be the same after this." Samuel's fingers gripped his rifle tighter, an instinctive reaction, but he chose not to raise it. Instead, he carefully studied the approaching figure, feeling that this encounter would inevitably change everything he thought he understood about the situation. The silent night stretched endlessly before them, thick with buried secrets, untold stories, and infinite possibilities waiting to unfold. With cautious intent, he took a deliberate step forward, ready to face whatever truths lay ahead. The moment of truth had finally arrived, and he knew that whatever awaited him at the designated meeting point would profoundly redefine his understanding of the situation. There was no turning back now. Samuel's sturdy boots crunched softly against the icy crust of the ground as he moved with caution through the dim, early morning shadows cast by the quiet forest clearing. The cold wind, sharp and relentless, tugged at his coat and carried a bone-chilling chill that seeped deep into his bones. His eyes darted quickly from one dark silhouette to another, carefully scanning for any sign of the specific marker or sign he had memorized overnight. The snow beneath his feet was uneven and disturbed from recent activity, making each step seem unnaturally loud in the profound silence surrounding him. A faint trail of footprints encircled his position, crossing his path in hurried, irregular loops, some being freshly made, while others were partially melted by the rising sun, yet all indicating recent passage through this area. He paused for a moment, kneeling down to examine the tracks more intently. The snow had been pressed down deliberately, with the edges of the footprints sharp and clearly defined, revealing signs of purposeful movement. They moved in a frantic, tangled pattern, crisscrossing unpredictably and overlapping in a way that strongly suggested multiple individuals had passed through this area, possibly attempting to erase their tracks or cover their footprints. Next to him, Luna's ears suddenly pricked up sharply, and her entire body became tense as she caught an intriguing and urgent scent in the air. Her nose lifted high, and she emitted a low, warning growl, her hackles rising stiffly along her back. Her body coiled with alertness, deeply attuned to the presence of potential danger nearby. Samuel straightened his posture immediately, instinctively scanning the surrounding environment with a cautious and wary gaze. Luna's warning was crystal clear. Something suspicious was close at hand, perhaps lurking in the shadows or quietly watching from the cover of the trees. He reached into his pocket, pulling out a compact compass, which confirmed and reaffirmed his orientation. The coordinates he had uncovered pointed directly to a specific clearing and open patch of earth nestled somewhere amidst the dense trees. However, the fresh signs of recent activity on the ground made him hesitate momentarily. Was this place truly the designated rendezvous point, or was it a carefully laid trap meant to lure him into an ambush or an illusion? Suddenly, a powerful gust of wind swept unpredictably through the clearing, causing the branches to rattle loudly and stirring up a sudden flurry of swirling snow that momentarily obscured the faint footprints on the frozen ground. Luna's growl intensified even further, her body tensing as she shifted her stance, digging her paws firmly into the icy, unforgiving terrain, her sharp eyes fixed intently past him. Her entire body was taut with anticipation, ready to pounce at any moment. "Easy, girl," Samuel whispered softly, his voice calm, steady, and reassuring. He kept his unwavering gaze fixed intently on the shadowy figures Luna was fixated on, his hand hovering cautiously near his waist, where his sheathed knife lay concealed. The thick silence around them grew increasingly oppressive and heavy, interrupted only by the gentle whisper of the wind swirling around the trees and Luna's low warning growl. Then, out of the corner of his eye, he saw a brief flicker of movement just behind a dense cluster of bushes, moving in a blur almost too quick to catch. His heart momentarily skipped a beat, but he maintained a calm and composed expression. Carefully, he slowly lowered himself into a crouch, moving forward with measured and deliberate steps, each one carefully placed to avoid causing any cracking sounds on the brittle icy surface beneath his feet. As he drew closer to the thick thicket, he noticed something unusual, a faint smear in the snow, a streak of dried blood hastily smeared in an uneven and hurried pattern, hinting at recent violence. His stomach clenched tightly with unease. Whoever had been in this place recently was either injured or in worse condition, which sent a chilling feeling down his spine. The disturbing evidence created an icy shiver running through his body. Luna's growl deepened into a low, warning bark, her hackles rising as she fixed her intense gaze on the same spot. Samuel's eyes flickered rapidly between her and the nearby shadows, instinctively telling him to stay extremely alert and cautious. He slowly reached out for his flashlight, flicking it on with a soft, almost imperceptible click. The bright beam sliced through the thick gloom, revealing a battered cloth bag lying among the scattered branches. He hesitated for a moment, then approached carefully, fully aware of the subtle shifts and unevenness in the terrain beneath his feet. The bag was torn open, spilling its contents across the ground, faded and old photographs, a broken and rusted compass, and a crumpled note with jagged, torn edges. His fingers gently brushed the paper as he carefully unfolded it, hoping to find answers or clues hidden within. A hastily scribbled note looked back at him, ominously warning they're watching. Trust no one. Meet at the old mill at dusk. The handwriting was uneven, trembling slightly, with ink smudges in several spots, yet the message remained clear enough to read. His stomach dropped even further, a sense of dread settling in. This wasn't a mere coincidence or random coincidence. Luna's low growl intensified, her entire body tense and alert, ready to react at any moment. Samuel's gaze shifted back toward the shadows lurking nearby, desperately searching for the source of her unease and anxiety. The breeze carried a faint metallic clang, rhythmic and unsettling, similar to the sound of scraping metal against rough stone surfaces. His heartbeat started to race faster, matching the ominous rhythm of the metallic noise. He carefully re-examined the scattered objects once more, then glanced around the quiet clearing, thoughtfully weighing all his available options. The fresh footprints clearly confirmed recent activity in the area, yet the message he found indicated a planned meeting, possibly a carefully set trap. His mind raced rapidly, trying to piece together the complex puzzle before him. Was this actually a genuine lead, or just a cunning lure designed to ensnare him in a trap? Suddenly, a rustling noise erupted from the trees, shattering the tense silence. Luna immediately snapped her head sharply toward the disturbance, baring her teeth and snarling fiercely. The sound was soon followed by a faint crackling noise, as if someone was sneaking silently through the dense underbrush with stealth. Samuel's grip on his flashlight grew even tighter as he slowly edged backward, keeping his eyes fixed on the shifting shadows. His instincts urged him to remain cautious, yet an intense sense of curiosity compelled him to move cautiously forward into the unknown. The trap was now glaringly obvious: the fresh blood, the numerous footprints leading in various directions, and the assortment of discarded belongings, all deliberately arranged to lure him deeper into danger. Despite this, he desperately needed to uncover the truth. He quickly glanced at Luna, who was now emitting a deep, steady growl, her tail held stiff and alert, signaling her readiness to defend or attack if necessary. Her stance was tense and alert, prepared to strike at a moment's notice. He understood that hesitation could be fatal in this situation. Suddenly, a shadowy figure emerged from behind a nearby tree cloaked hunched over, with eyes faintly shimmering in the dim, weak light. Samuel instantly froze, his heart pounding in his chest. The mysterious figure hesitated for a moment, seemingly observing him carefully, then shifted slightly, testing whether he was a threat or not. Every second felt painfully long and heavy with anticipation. He inhaled slowly and deliberately, trying to suppress his rising anxiety and force a sense of calm into his trembling limbs. His mind raced desperately for a clever plan should he confront the strange figure directly or choose to retreat quickly and cautiously, risk an intense, unpredictable encounter, or slip away quietly without being noticed. The cold, biting air pressed down heavily on him, thick with an overwhelming sense of uncertainty and danger. Without any warning, Luna suddenly lunged forward aggressively, barking loudly and snapping sharply at the figure's legs. Startled, the figure recoiled in surprise, shouting unintelligibly in an unfamiliar language, then quickly vanished into the surrounding shadows. Samuel seized the crucial moment, swiftly turning around and urging Luna to follow him as he moved cautiously into the dense trees. He pressed onward, guided only by instinct and the faint flickering glow of his flashlight, weaving carefully through the tangled undergrowth. Every step felt like a gamble. Each crack of a branch or shift of snow beneath his feet could reveal his position. The trap had been carefully set, but the game was still far from over. Deeper into the dark forest, his thoughts churned with anxiety and determination, weighing his next move. Was this the final destination, or just another unexpected twist in the complex web of secrets he was tirelessly unraveling? The faint distant sound of footsteps continued to echo behind him, serving as a constant reminder that danger lurked unseen in the shadows. He paused briefly, alertly listening to the environment around him. The wind howled even louder now, carrying quiet whispers of unseen threats waiting to strike. Luna's quiet, tense presence remained his only source of reassurance and comfort in this tense moment. He knew he had to keep moving forward faster, quieter before the shadows completely closed in and engulfed him. Every heartbeat blurred the fragile line between safety and imminent peril. The trap had been sprung, but the hardest challenge was still ahead. Still, amidst the growing dread and uncertainty, a flicker of unwavering resolve ignited deeply within him. He was determined to find a way out, no matter the obstacles. He had no choice but to proceed. As he advanced further, the surrounding terrain darkened considerably, becoming more ominous and stifling. The certainty that he was approaching an unknown and dangerous threat intensified his caution, yet it also heightened his concentration and resolve. The clues had clearly brought him to this point now. He faced a critical decision, whether to confront the emerging danger head-on or to seek out a concealed escape route hidden among the shadows. His gaze fixed on a subtle movement in the distance, a slight shifting among the dense trees. He tightened his muscles, tensing in readiness for whatever might emerge. Luna's body was rigid and tense, her ears finely tuned and alert, her growl low, steady, and warning. The situation was escalating rapidly, and he understood that he couldn't afford to stay passive or hesitant. The shadows grew thicker and more oppressive, and with each careful step he took, it felt as if the forest environment was closing in around him. The faint metallic clang echoed, again distant yet unmistakable, confirming that some activity or threat was nearby. Something was steadily approaching, possibly reinforcements coming to assist, or perhaps another malicious trap set to catch him off guard. He took a deep, calming breath, trying to steady his trembling nerves. The night had transformed from a simple dark backdrop into an active and unpredictable participant in the looming danger. His mind rapidly raced through possible options, evaluating the risks and benefits. Should he attempt to silently slip past and evade detection, or prepare himself for a potentially deadly confrontation? The decision he made could ultimately determine whether he survived this encounter or became just another hidden secret buried within the forest's dark and mysterious depths. Suddenly, Luna sharply snapped her head to the side, her body tense and alert. A shadowy figure appeared from behind a gnarled tree, cloaked in darkness and hunched over, with eyes faintly flickering with an eerie, unnatural glow. Samuel froze in place, his heart pounding fiercely in his chest. The figure paused for a moment, then shifted slightly, as if testing whether Samuel was a threat or just another unwelcome presence in the shadowy woods. In that frozen, tense moment, Samuel suddenly realized that the trap was far more intricate and sophisticated than he had initially believed. It wasn't simply about tracking footprints or deciphering coded messages. It required reading between the lines, recognizing the faintest subtle cues, and understanding the enemy's strategic deception. His grip on his flashlight grew firmer, knuckles whitening as he prepared himself for whatever dangers or surprises might emerge next from the shadows. The surrounding forest seemed to hold its breath in anticipation. The confrontation was definitely far from over, and Samuel understood that the only way to escape lay through clever tactics, unwavering patience, and a bold willingness to confront whatever lurking entities or shadows hid in the darkness. Samuel was now balancing precariously on the fragile icy edge of the narrow ledge, the icy wind slicing through his coat and whipping his hair into a wild, chaotic tangle. Below, the vast valley was engulfed in a swirling, dense haze of snow and thick fog, where the distant trees appeared as faint shadows flickering in the storm's relentless chaos. The unyielding roar of the wind battered against the cliffside, each powerful gust threatening to throw him off balance. His heart pounded loudly in his ears, shallow breaths fogging in the cold air, as he fought desperately to maintain his footing and not slip into the abyss below. Luna pressed herself tightly against Samuel's side, her dense fur bristling in response, ears flattened flat against her head to shield from the biting icy wind. Her eyes darted anxiously back and forth between the swirling, blinding whiteness surrounding them and Samuel's tense, alert expression. Suddenly, from the raging blizzard, a dark, ominous figure emerged with deliberate, slow steps, seeming to materialize like a ghost against the stark white chaos. It was a silhouette, clearly armed, standing steady and unwavering, with piercing eyes locked directly onto Samuel's face. The stranger's stance was stiff and uncompromising, holding a rifle in the loose but confident grip, with a finger resting calmly on the trigger guard. Samuel's stomach clenched painfully. The harsh reality of the dangerous situation rapidly sank, and this was no longer a cautious game of observation from a safe distance. A confrontation was now unavoidable and imminent. "Drop your weapon," the stranger ordered firmly, his voice hoarse yet unwavering, effectively cutting through the howling wind and swirling snow. His tone left no room for hesitation, each word charged with menace and authoritative intent. Samuel's mind was flooded with conflicting instincts. He considered fleeing, perhaps by dashing into the snow and risking a dangerous fall, or standing his ground despite the danger, risking injury, but possibly defending Luna and himself from harm. The narrow ledge offered very limited space to move or escape, and the raging storm's intense fury obscured any chance or opportunity for retreat or escape. His hand instinctively reached inside his coat pocket, gripping the well-worn pocket knife he always carried, a relic from a past life filled with danger, now a fragile symbol of hope. Luna growled softly, her hackles raised high, as a low warning rumble vibrated steadily in her throat, alert and tense. Her sharp eyes flicked quickly between the armed man and Samuel, clearly sensing the mounting tension and danger, prepared to defend if needed. The stranger's gaze briefly shifted toward the dog, then returned to Samuel, suspicion flickering across his face like a fleeting shadow. "Don't make me repeat myself," the man said sharply, his voice now more commanding and edged with urgency. "Surrender your weapons and come quietly. I really don't want to hurt anyone." Samuel's mind was flooded with urgent thoughts. Surrendering would mean risking his safety, losing his freedom, and possibly endangering Luna's life in the process. Resisting might have cost him dearly, but turning away felt like surrendering his dignity, honor, and essential purpose. The wind grew even more fierce, swirling around them with relentless force, carrying the ominous threat of violence and intensifying the oppressive silence that stretched heavily between them. He drew a slow, deliberate breath, carefully steadying his trembling hand as he made a firm decision. Not because he believed the challenge would be easy, but because retreat was no longer a viable option in his mind. The raging storm, the looming threat, all of it had pushed him beyond his usual cautious shell, forcing him to confront his fears. His voice remained calm yet filled with unwavering resolve. "Stay where you are," he commanded, his words muffled by the howling wind. "You really don't want to do this." The stranger's eyes narrowed sharply, a hint of suspicion and defiance burning within them. "You think I care about what I want. You are merely another obstacle standing in my way. Step back now, or I will force you to do so." Luna cautiously edged forward just a bit more, her hackles raised high, and her teeth bared in a low, menacing growl. Samuel shifted his weight slightly, his eyes narrowing as he instinctively reached into his coat pocket, his fingers curling firmly around the familiar worn handle of his trusty pocket knife. The biting cold penetrated his skin, numbing his fingertips, yet he kept his focus unwavering and steady. Enough of this nonsense, Samuel finally declared, his voice firm and unwavering. "You're not going to take me without putting up a fight." The stranger's grip on the rifle tightened anxiously. For a tense moment, it appeared he might fire, but then he hesitated, a flicker of doubt passing through his eyes. The wind carried a distant haunting cry, perhaps from an animal, or maybe the mournful lament of the storm, and in that fleeting instant, Samuel recognized his chance to act. He lunged desperately forward, pushing off the treacherously icy ledge with all his remaining strength, making a frantic leap toward the figure below. Luna barked sharply and warningly, her voice sharp and urgent, trying to alert him to the danger, but suddenly a gunshot rang out first. Snow and ice exploded into the air as the bullet whistled past him, embedding itself firmly into the frozen ground beneath. Samuel's body was thrown backward, losing his footing on the slick surface, but his hand quickly grasped onto a loose, jagged rock, preventing him from falling into the deadly abyss. The shot narrowly missed its target, and the man cursed loudly in frustration, then rushed forward again, aiming carefully once more. Samuel scrambled to his feet rapidly, adrenaline surging wildly through his veins, sharpening his senses. The narrow, precarious ledge was a dangerous trap, a thin strip of ice and jagged stone barely holding him, but he refused to surrender to despair or hopelessness. He quickly glanced at Luna, who was snarling fiercely, her teeth bared in a protective growl, fully prepared to strike. Her instinct was to defend her human at all costs. Samuel understood that he couldn't afford to let her down now, not when every second counted. The stranger continued his approach, raising his rifle once more in a threatening gesture, but Samuel quickly recognized his opportunity to act. With swift, confident motion, he pulled out his small pocket knife and extended it towards the attacker, pretending it was a makeshift weapon. Although it wasn't much against a firearm, it was all Samuel managed to muster in that tense moment. His voice broke through the howling storm, firm and unwavering. "Stay back, I won't ask again." The armed man paused, uncertainty flashing across his face as he hesitated for a split second. Then a surge of anger replaced the confusion. He aimed his rifle once more, index finger tightening on the trigger, ready to fire. Samuel's heart hammered in his chest, but he refused to back down, keeping his gaze fixed steadily on the intruder's eyes. Suddenly, a strong gust of wind swept through the battlefield, causing a brief lull in the chaos. For a fleeting moment, it felt like time itself had paused the raging storm, the imminent threat, and the tense silence that stretched between them all seemed to freeze in that single instant. The stranger's grip faltered briefly, doubt clearly crossing his tense features as he hesitated. Luna barked once more, this time louder and more insistently, demanding the man's full attention to her commanding call. His eyes flicked rapidly back and forth from the vigilant dog to Samuel, weighing his options carefully in that tense moment. After a long tense pause, the man cursed softly under his breath, lowering the rifle slightly in a hesitant gesture of surrender. "You're lucky," he spat bitterly. "This isn't over, not by a long shot." Samuel didn't lower his knife, but he took a cautious, deliberate step back, maintaining a steady gaze fixed on the stranger's unpredictable movements. His body was trembling not only from the biting cold that cut through his clothes, but also from a mixture of relief and a renewed sense of determination. The threat had been immediate and intensely real, yet somehow he had managed to survive this harrowing encounter. The storm continued its furious rage around them, swirling snow and wind everywhere, but inside, a small flicker of clarity and resolve had ignited within him, strengthening his will to carry on. He drew a slow, deliberate breath, then carefully turned away from the treacherous ledge, staggering backward toward the shelter with cautious steps. Each movement felt heavy and burdensome, yet somehow lighter, carrying the weight of the intense confrontation that had just unfolded behind him. The distant horizon remained shrouded in swirling snow and thick fog, but the storm's ferocious grip seemed to loosen just enough to grant him a fleeting chance to reassess his next course of action. Luna pressed close beside him, silent yet intensely alert, her keen eyes scanning the swirling mist for any signs of pursuit or danger. Samuel's thoughts live raced. What was that man truly after? Why had he ventured so deeply into this unforgiving frozen wilderness? And most crucially, what choices now lay before him? The storm continued its relentless assault, battering everything around him, but inside, Samuel sensed a subtle shift, a flicker of renewed purpose amid the chaos and destruction. He had narrowly escaped certain death, yet the real danger was still lurking ahead. This harrowing encounter had both tested his resilience and exposed his vulnerability in equal measure. His understanding of the threat's presence grew deeper and more comprehensive, reinforcing his realization that survival truly depended on constant vigilance and swift adaptation to the unpredictable circumstances. He paused for a brief moment, attentively listening to the mournful lamenting cry of the wind and the relentless pounding of his racing heart. The storm showed no signs of diminishing or calming, yet he instinctively sensed that, for the time being, he had managed to seize a fragile but valuable moment of clarity amidst the chaos. He slowly steadied himself, then pushed forward, each step feeling heavier and more laborious, but driven by a renewed sense of determination. Luna trotted confidently beside him, her silent vigilance unwavering as ever. Samuel's mind was a turbulent whirl of thoughts. Who was that mysterious man? What was his true intent? And what new threats or dangers could be lurking just ahead in the shadows? The storm's fury persisted fiercely, yet within him, a quiet but unwavering resolve was growing stronger, ready to confront whatever challenges awaited beyond the bleak, uncertain horizon. The first gentle light of dawn filtered softly through the frost-covered window pane, casting a pale muted glow over the peaceful interior of Samuel's quiet cabin. Outside, the melting snow uncovered irregular patches of earth, muddy and delicate, where tender new shoots stubbornly pushed through the thaw symbols of resilience and renewal amid the lingering winter cold. The air was still and hushed, filled with a soft, gentle silence, interrupted only by the faint drip of melting ice sliding silently from the eaves. Inside, Samuel sat quietly in his chair, motionless, with his eyes fixed on the distant landscape beyond the glass window, a faint contemplative smile playing on his lips as he quietly absorbed the peaceful awakening of the wilderness. Luna rested peacefully beside him, her breathing steady, calm, and unhurried. Her head was comfortably tucked beneath her paws, ears twitching subtly at irregular intervals as she listened attentively to the faint sounds of the awakening forest outside. Her steady presence served as a reliable anchor, grounding Samuel amidst swirling thoughts and lingering memories that refused to settle. He reached out slowly, his fingers gently brushing the worn fabric of his coat, feeling the persistent cold still subtly embedded in its fibers. Memories from recent days flickered across his mind like fleeting shadows, dangerous encounters, cryptic messages, and the final wish of the stranger who had entrusted him with a fragile yet vital hope. These thoughts weighed heavily on him, yet he recognized that they had ultimately guided him to this moment of peaceful reflection. A faint whisper of the stranger's voice echoed softly in his mind, blending hope with lingering regret. The ultimate wish had been granted, yet it came at a burden that heavily weighed on his conscience. He pondered whether the sacrifice had truly been justified, questioning if the weight now on his shoulders had been relieved or merely transferred from one place to another. A deep, steadying breath helped him find composure as he directed his gaze downward to Luna, whose calm, knowing eyes reflected understanding and silent support. Her unwavering presence served as a poignant reminder that, despite the darkness and turmoil of recent days, life continued to persevere, resilient, unyielding, and full of hope. His mind wandered to the relic resting on the table, a worn, unassuming token that embodied both the sorrow of loss and the promise of hope gained through sacrifice. He reached out and gently traced the relic's rough, weathered edges, feeling the faint pulse of history and countless stories etched into its surface. The message behind it, the act of placing trust, and the final act of kindness, these elements, had inscribed themselves into his consciousness, settling into a distant but almost surreal clarity. The relics symbolized the difficult choices he had made, and the bonds he had forged during moments filled with desperation and courage. Suddenly, a gust of cold wind slipped tenderly through a crack in the cabin wall, causing him to shiver involuntarily. He slowly rose from his seat, stretching his stiff limbs, and once again cast his gaze out the window to observe the vast landscape stretching beyond. The vast and unpredictable landscape stretched out before him, both alluring and laden with potential dangers. As the snow steadily receded, it uncovered patches of dark earth and delicate shoots beginning to sprout, representing fragile but hopeful signs of renewal amid the remnants of winter's chilly hold. His determination grew stronger as he contemplated the path that lay ahead, full of unknowns and challenges. He pondered about the future, which remained uncertain and filled with lingering questions. Could he truly trust again after enduring so much pain and hardship? Would old doubts and fears reemerge like shadowy specters haunting his mind once more? Yet beneath those lingering doubts, a quiet yet resolute sense of purpose was beginning to take shape. The burden of the past felt lighter now, replaced by a fragile thread of hope woven through his thoughts. He sensed that the cycle of hardship was not entirely over, but it entered a new phase, one characterized by cautious optimism and a tentative openness to what might come. Luna stood nearby at his side, her tail flicking softly in a gentle rhythmic motion, as if sharing in his quiet reflection. Together, they slowly moved toward the sturdy wooden door. Samuel hesitated for a brief moment, his hand reaching cautiously for the cool, familiar handle, then confidently pushed it open. The crisp, fresh morning air instantly greeted him like a powerful awakening, invigorating his senses and feeling supremely pure. He took a steady step forward, then another, each movement deliberate and measured, as if testing his own readiness for what lay ahead. The expansive landscape before him beckoned, irresistibly wild, untamed, and unpredictable, offering the promise of new challenges, exciting discoveries, and unforeseen adventures. He cast a lingering glance back at the humble cabin, its weathered walls, the faint smoke curling gently from the chimney, and the sanctuary it had provided him over time. It had sheltered him through fears and moments of revelation, serving as a refuge amid chaos and uncertainty. Now, he realized that it was time to leave, at least for a while, to face whatever awaited beyond those familiar walls. The past was behind him, but its lessons remained with him, shaping and strengthening his resolve. As he descended the worn steps into the melting snow, Samuel's mind was filled with countless questions about what the future held. What awaited him beyond the distant horizon? Could he truly trust again, or would the echoes of old fears cast long shadows over his path? The answers remained elusive and uncertain, yet an increasing sense of confidence and preparedness grew within him with each deliberate step forward. The dense wilderness sprawled ahead, vast, silent, and seemingly untouched, serving as a blank canvas awaiting new stories, adventures, and uncharted destinies to unfold. Luna trotted confidently ahead, her nose to the ground, instinctively sensing subtle shifts in scent and sound that hinted at hidden mysteries. Samuel followed carefully, his shoulders squared and tense, carrying the heavy weight of past memories, along with a fragile hope for renewal and new beginnings. He paused briefly, casting a lingering glance back at the faint glow of dawn fading behind the horizon. A gentle, refreshing breeze stirred the leaves on the trees, whispering secrets and ancient tales only the forest seemingly knew. In that quiet murmur, he found a delicate promise that perhaps redemption and understanding awaited him ahead. The past lay behind him now, The future beckoned confidently with an open, uncertain horizon that promised both hope and challenge. With unwavering determination, Samuel carefully stepped forward into the new day. The hopeful promise of positive change took root deep inside him, gentle yet resolute. No matter what obstacles, difficulties might lie ahead, he no longer faced them alone. The vast wilderness surroundings, the memories he carried, and Luna's quiet, steadfast companionship all had seamlessly become integral parts of a much larger, more meaningful story. A story built on resilience, hope, and perseverance, which was only just beginning to unfold and reveal its true potential.